right, good evening, everybody. We are here for the meeting of the CUSD Board of Education of January 18th, 2020, our last regularly scheduled board meeting of the year. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So welcome, everybody. Opening items, we need to get the board agenda approved. I do want to note that on item number 2.2, we are awaiting either Senator Jerry Hill or a member of his staff to join us. So we're just going to keep rolling that item until they are able to I just got a message that I think Lisa is here with us. So we're going to go ahead and approve the board agenda as written then. So can I get a motion and a second for that?
I move to approve the board agenda as presented.
Thank you, Jerry. Motions and a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, and I heard Satish. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so Satish seconds. So all in favor of approving the board agenda? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. So moving on to item 2.2, I will turn it over to Leslie to welcome our guests to kick this one off.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'd like to welcome Lisa, who is here on behalf of Senator Jerry Hill. So Lisa, we're going to turn it over to you for your presentation.
Oh, unmute.
You're muted.
All right, please. Okay, start over. Thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to be here. These are really interesting times, so I'm going to try to give a presentation for which I'm not entirely prepared. The state has some things in motion and some other things in motion. And I am going to talk a little bit about Dr. Baker, and then I'm going to offer consolation prize, a little bit of an IOU. And so please excuse the informal nature of this. I'm going to read a little bit because I had to prepare. So I am very pleased to be representing Senator Jerry Hill at the board meeting today to honor Dr. Craig Baker. My name is Lisa Chung, and I'm a senior staff member at the district office of Jerry Hill. And I am also a member of the Cupertino Union School District community and the proud mother of a Cupertino Middle School 8th grader who was recently promoted to the 9th grade last week. So I guess I could say I'm a member too. When Dr. Baker announced his retirement, we were still deep in the depths of our shelter-in-place orders. And I know that there was a wave of sadness invisible to all of us, but deeply felt, spreading across the households of 23 schools in the Cupertino Union School District. This is because I know that in 2017, many people had looked forward to receiving a proven leader, one with a resume that had included Superintendent of the Year for Region 5 by the Association of California School Administrators. One who had spent a large amount of his career in and around our side of the Bay Area, from Redwood City to San Carlos, and some formative years in the other Bay Area, the Monterey Bay Area. I know in 2017, people had looked forward to having a helmsman who was reputed to be a highly professional educator, one who is also described as being collaborative, progressive, and supportive. After a relatively short time, it appears the anticipation had been well-founded. It is not many people who can execute a promise to bring open communication and transparency, to rebuild trust on the heels of a rupture. It's not many people who can be saluted, in the words of your board president, for visionary leadership, leadership that has transformed and inspired a school's community. And it's not many people can develop a strategic plan and provide a place at the table for each members of your, excuse me, unanticipated. It's not many people who can develop a strategic plan, provide a place at the table for each member of the team, and make them feel valued. And lastly, it's not many people who can leave a district with a board's challenge that the team that has been built can carry forth through an incredibly difficult and challenging period with so many unknowns. Yet that's how the leadership is indeed left on at Dr. Baker's retirement. I think that shows what Dr. Baker has built during his time at CUSD. We are indeed living through some difficult times. And one of the difficulties I have is by offering a thing that says it looks like this, but your name is not on it. Please don't look too carefully. This is one of those, it looks like this. And when our legislative commendations unit is back in place in their spot in Sacramento, we will have one for you, and we will deliver it to you. So congratulations, Dr. Baker, on your retirement, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you for
Say it
being
again
with us,
for me.
Lisa.
Thank you for having me, and I guess onward with your very busy agenda.
Thank you.
So, so the board is going to actually hijack this agenda item a little bit. We wanted to take a moment to also express our thanks and recognize this as Dr. Craig Baker's last school board meeting of his career, and that we are honored to be here with you tonight as you celebrate that milestone achievement. So we do have a little gift, and your wife, Jessica, helped us hatch a little plan here. We know that over the years, your gift to departing board presidents and to departing board members has been to choose a children's picture book that has a meaningful message and sort of encapsulates the moment in time. And so we did our best to find something that we thought might be the right picture book to send you off into retirement with. So Jeff, if you could bring up my slides. We'll let you open that, Craig, as we bring up one slide back, slide number 1.
I already like it.
Everything I need to know, I learned from a little golden book. And so the board members have each inscribed your little golden book for you. But sort of the iconic moment for many young readers is a little golden book story. And so here we go. Everything I need to know, I learned from a little golden book. Is your life right now in COVID-19 starting to feel like a circus? Retirement is a new day. Don't panic. Have some pancakes. Get some exercise every day. Get plenty of sleep too, because now's the time for that. Don't forget your antioxidants. And make music a part of your life. We know one of the things you're looking forward to is some time to spend playing your guitar. So we wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
We hope that you have the time to frolic and to daydream and to go on a joyride and to stargaze and to have a retirement where you get to cultivate contentment. Craig, we hope that wherever your journey takes you, that your retirement is golden.
Thank you.
So that's our message to you as we send you off. And I want to open it up to my fellow board members if anybody wanted to have a chance to say anything. Somebody want to go?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
All right, Phyllis, you start us off.
Okay. So Craig, as you know, I've worked for a lot of superintendents in this district for very, very many years. And you are a shining beacon to me with your your forward thinking, your innovative ideas, your bringing together of the community at a time when we so desperately needed that. Your sense of humor is amazing. And I just want you to know that I personally am really going to miss you. I'm absolutely looking forward to Stacy coming in, but I'm going to miss you a lot. So thank you so much for your service to Cupertino.
Thanks, Phyllis.
And I heard Jerry in there.
Sure. I'll go ahead and go next. You know, Dr. Baker, I don't have the words to describe how grateful I am that we've had you here in our district in the last couple of years and having a chance to work with you. I remember when you came in, as Lisa talked about, we were looking for a leader to really help rebuild our community. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a really big job, and how's anyone going to do this? But you've shown that you've done an incredible job of the community engagement. And I think it's because you have this willingness to listen, and then this focus on solving problems, and really, and while you're doing that, really keeping the students in mind. And then I look back at the last couple of years, Dr. Baker, and I feel like you really made some structural transformations here in our district. I still remember last year you were tirelessly visiting all 25 schools to educate everyone on our budget situation. And so now when I go out to the community, the questions are really about how do we address our problem rather than what it was a year ago, what does the budget look like? I think you've driven through the strategic plan, which I think is going to really help us and has helped us in making some of these a guideline for making decisions and structural, resource allocations and that sort of thing. And then a lot of operational things that would take me hours to talk about. I remember Yosemite used to be a big hassle, right? And you came in and you just took care of it, and I haven't heard anything about it the last couple of years. And so just having worked with you, I think just on a sort of a private note, I guess, I feel like public education has it's really lucky to have had someone like you. You're one of the best executives I've ever seen. You have that vision, coupled with that operational capability to get things done, and you truly care about the children. And so, I wish you well. I think you, sure, you certainly deserve all the downtime you're going to have for guitars and various other things. We're really, really going to miss you, but I think you've set us up to sort of face the challenges ahead. And please don't be a stranger. Come back and visit. Fill out a card. We'll give you more than 3 minutes. You can just come and say your piece. All right. Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Thank you. What a gift! I get 4 minutes at a board meeting.
Satish, jump in.
Okay, Dr. Baker, what else I should say? Now, I think Jerry summarized most of the things, but it has been a great year and a half with you. And I think every time I meet you, every meeting, whatever we had, it has been very productive. I enjoyed, the way you interact and how you approach every problems. I never see a tension in your face. I always see I go with a big problem. Hey, Dr. Baker, we want to talk about this. We have to, Satish, just keep it aside, kind of, right? First you give me an advice, how to handle the things. And a lot of learning, even though it was a short time we had together. And I truly am going to miss that. And a lot I learned. And, it will be always in my mind. And I'm going to, sure, I'll be practicing a lot of learnings what I had with you. All the best, Dr. Baker. We are going to miss you.
Sylvia, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Dr. Baker, I was thinking about this story in the book of Esther. It's part of the Jewish tradition, but there's a famous phrase about how Esther was brought in for such a time as this. And it's very apropos for you, I think, because I think in the history of CUSD, for you to be coming in at the time that you came in and really to be helping with healing a lot of things that were happening in our community. And I think you were instrumental to that. And so I'm very grateful and very thankful as a parent and now as a board member. I remember one of the very first times I met you, I was leading a PTO meeting and you offered to come, and it blew my mind that the superintendent would come to one of our PTO meetings. And really the district before then to me had been a black box. We didn't really know what was happening there. But you created not just a window, but a door to create just easy access to it. And for me personally, I think that was part of what started my journey, to be able to feel like, oh, even I, as a parent, can go and talk to the district and make a difference. And, here I am now. So I want to thank you for that, because really that was you setting that example and opening that doorway. So you will be missed.
And I'll just close by saying that I think everything my colleagues have said is true, and Jerry really highlighted your skills as an executive. I'd go back to your skills as a teacher. I think in your heart and in your core, you are a teacher, and I know my learning as a new board member, as a first-time board president, has been one of the steepest learning curves of my life, and to have a mentor through that has meant a lot. So I will leave it with that so that I don't get messy here again, as I am wont to do. And I will just say that you have our very best wishes and all of our best thoughts for an exciting and joyful and adventurous and just an opportunity to go do those things that I know retirement someday is one of those things we all look forward to. So I hope it's everything that you've imagined for retirement someday to be. So with that, I will just check with Leslie. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
We do not.
Okay. And I know staff has been reaching out and will continue to as you wind down your time here in the district. So with that, I will say that we'll do our very best to make sure that this meeting goes to midnight for you tonight, so that you get to enjoy the full effect of a final slog board meeting for you, and hope that it's a memorable one in many ways. So, all right. And do you want a chance to say anything here?
Maybe I'll save that for next week. I know I get to have a little gathering with you all. And
okay.
So I think I'll hold it there. And yeah, it is emotional. And I just want you to know you are an amazing, amazing board and an executive team. And I have no doubt you're going to more than weather this difficult time, but lead through it. And, I'm right here. So if you want terrible advice, just give me a buzz.
All right, so we will go ahead and close this meeting out. And thank you to Lisa from Senator Jerry Hill's office. We really appreciate the Senator taking the time to honor Dr. Baker for his many, many years of service across many districts within Senator Hill's scope and tenure. So, all right.
Lord, I do want to say, Lisa, I just want, I've known Jerry Hill since day one of my career. And so it does mean a lot to me, that to receive this almost honor of, I really appreciate it. So please send him my best and let him know I appreciate it. Thank you.
I will indeed.
All right. Okay, so closing out 2-2 and moving on to 3-1. I know we've got a couple of our employee organizations here with us tonight. I know I saw Purnima and Kai and possibly Britt. I don't know if we have Britt here tonight, but Kai, did you want to speak at all tonight?
Yes, please.
Great. So let's get you in here.
All right. Thank you guys for letting me speak. I too just want to thank Dr. Baker, Craig, for all the hard work and wisdom you've provided to our district. I also really appreciate your sense of humor. I remember one of the first times we had an executive cabinet meeting at a school. I came in, sat in the front where we usually sit. There were these chairs laid out. The rest of the executive cabinet showed up. We all sat there. And then Dr. Baker comes in. He just kind of sidles up next to some teacher and sits there and waits for us to start doing our thing. I thought it was hilarious. And I just appreciate so much how at times you do have the right thing to say. It's just amazing. And it has warmed my heart. The other thing I really appreciate you, Dr. Baker, is that you really keep it real. I always find that when we come back to everything, you always try to pose sort of the way you think around what is best for student learning and what is best for our kids. And I appreciate that so much, because that's just really what it is just all about. And I hope you have a great retirement. Enjoy yourself. I know you're going to spend a lot of time in Russian River, so I hope you get a lot of time to just, you know, sit and listen to the river sing sweet songs to cure your soul.
Thanks, Kai. Come join me there.
I'd love to.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kai. And Purnima, we have with us tonight from our CSEA. Welcome.
Hi. Hello. Hi, everybody. Respected members of the board and the executive committee, and Dr. Baker. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for giving me the opportunity today. I would like to say a few things, because last time my mic was off and I just couldn't express my thoughts last week. So I would just like to take this opportunity today. So as we approach the end of this eventful year, I feel very fortunate to have been part of a wonderful team that had just one objective in mind. That is to stand as one family, bound by the love for our kids. It was indeed a learning moment for me at every step to see people rise to the occasion and give it their best. On behalf of CSEA, I would like to thank Dr. Baker for his leadership and wish him the very best in his next phase of life. My sincere thanks to Stacy for her stewardship in bringing us all together and working in unison to achieve our goal. We are definitely in good hands. Dr. Baker will definitely miss you, but Stacy, we look forward to you being our superintendent going forward. I wish you all a restful and happy summer break, and looking forward to meeting all of you in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And Britt, did Britt join us tonight? I don't see him in the panelists, so I'm going to move along, and if he joins later, we can wrap back if needed. So moving us on to public comment guidelines, just to address that we always have a spot on our agenda for public comment for items that are not on the agenda, as well as taking comments for items that are on the agenda in line with those items. We've had, I think, some questions and thought about that maybe we needed to review some of the protocols that we have around public comment guidelines in the district, just because normally when we're in our space together in our boardroom, we're able to have a card out on each seat that addresses some of these things, but in our strange Zoom world here, we don't have that, and so we thought maybe we should review that. Just wanted to address that there is an opportunity on every agenda for the public to be able to comment in, that is the public's chance to express both items that might not be on the agenda and express their feelings or thoughts around things they'd like to see us consider taking up in the future, as well as items that are on the agenda, and gives the public an opportunity to comment and provide input into things they would like the board members and staff to consider as they, make decisions for the district. Just as a reminder that the board does not have a whole lot of latitude to engage in any sort of dialogue or two-way communication around public comment, and the main reason being that we have to be very careful that everyone in the public, including the people who are in the meeting, but just as much including the people who aren't in the meeting, the opportunity to know what's being said in a meeting, so that they have the opportunity to be present when something is discussed or when something is, have a dialogue about it. And so we do have to adhere pretty closely to exactly the items that have been agendized and the way in which they are agendized on any given board meeting. Also just to point out that we know that board meetings generate questions, and also that people just have questions, and that perhaps the best way for the public to participate appreciate when you have questions is it's a fine thing to raise your questions in public comment, but it's also a great thing to follow up with an email to board or to staff when you have questions, because that's the way that districts are designed to respond to those questions. So community members, you know, are given the opportunity to make their public comment when they're recognized by the board president, with our staff very much helping me to keep track of all of the public comments that are coming in, and that each speaker will have 3 minutes to comment on an item that's either not on the agenda or on an item that is on the agenda, that the board largely will not respond to those items in that meeting, but that we very much take into consideration what the public is sharing with us, what the public is raising. I know we all not only listen intently in these meetings, often take notes in these meetings, but also circle back with staff routinely to ensure that we have all the information we need to be able to make decisions. That's, you know, what you can expect. So talking through this, but I know that these that this slide will be a part of the public record, so anyone is free to read it in its entirety. So with that, Leslie, do we have any items that aren't on the agenda today?
Do not.
Okay, so I do know we have some public comments for later in the meeting, and we will take those those comments with the item, in line with the item as we get to them. All right, so moving us along, our first item under 5, our public hearing, adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2020. Because this is a public hearing, I do need to officially open this item. It is 6:27. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing. And do we have any comments on this item?
We do not.
Oop, I missed that. Did you say we do not?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. So I will give it another couple seconds here, just since it's an official public hearing, just to make sure.
Just one sec. One just came in. Correct. We still do not.
All right. So then, Dr. Baker, it's been a sufficient amount of time for me to go ahead and close this? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:28. Thank you. All right, so moving on to consent. Our first item up for consent, I need to take separately, item 6.1. If I can get a motion and a second for 6.1 only on consent, please.
I move to approve item 6.1.
Thank you, Jerry. And a second? And Phyllis seconds. So all in favor on this item, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Which would be, actually, I'm not going to abstain. I'm going to recuse myself. And so motion carries 4-0 with 1 recusal. Moving on to 6.2 through 6.11, if I can get a motion for that, please.
I move that we approve items 6.2 through 6.11.
Great, thank you, Phyllis. And a second, please.
I'll second it.
I heard Satish second. So all in favor of 6.2 through 6.11, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, I believe we have information presentation to accept our quarterly Williams report. Allison, right, on this one?
Yes, this is just our standard reporting, and we had no complaints during this time period, so we just ask that you accept the report.
Always what we like to hear. Thank you for that. I think we don't need any action on this one, so we just accept this one, right?
The agenda says action, consent.
Oh.
Should we?
No, this is information.
It's information presentation, right?
Yeah, we're only required to bring it as information to share it with you and the public. So there's no motion or anything.
Okay. I do see that, Jerry, under type. Craig, are we okay with that? That on the agenda under type, it does say action?
We are. I
Okay.
don't. We're correcting it here and now.
Okay.
It would be hard the other way around, actually.
Yeah.
If it
Okay.
weren't information, we would not be able to take action. But since you don't have to, it doesn't matter.
Perfect. Okay. So then moving us right along to item 8, our discussion tonight on 8.1, our ballot measures timeline, process, and needs discussion. So I think I'm introducing Jeff and Stacy here tonight, right?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to lay a little bit of the foundation of their intent of bringing this forward tonight and then turn it over to Jeff to go through the presentation. This is really the first opportunity for you as board members to have this discussion, and we want to, at the end of it, have a clear direction on where we're headed as a district as we are placing things, if we place things on the ballot measures, whether that is a bond or a parcel tax. So we do want to lay out over the next couple of years what the options are, whether it's a bond or whether a parcel or some combination of that. And we're really bringing it forward in light of our current situation with the economy surrounding us, with the impact of the COVID-19, as well as our already budget situation that we've been addressing throughout the last year. So really want to be able to dive in and have that discussion and walk away with a direction. And if there's further information that needs to be brought forward, if we do determine whether it's a parcel tax or bond, we would be happy to do that. But if we can just focus on really that in-depth discussion of parcel and bond, and we'll answer any questions. So I'm going to turn over to Jeff to go through the presentation.
Thank you, Stacey, and good evening, board. I'm going to have a pretty swift pace through this presentation because really the most important part is to allow our board to have some discussion tonight. Happy to return to any slides that need that throughout. So big overview, obviously with what we were planning originally with the idea of going through a parcel tax in March and November, our economy has drastically changed. The state of the nation has certainly changed. And so because of that, it is worthy, as Stacey was saying, to have a deep discussion with the board. So we've seen the COVID-19 impact, we're facing the recession, and obviously the board is very aware of our fiscal situation as a district. We also have the fiscal considerations of our community. There's risk of placing a measure on the ballot right now, especially since we had a measure that was placed in March that did fail. We need to maintain the amazing community and the amazing community support that we've had over the years. And at the same time, we still have district needs, and those district needs certainly aren't going to go away by themselves. And so with that, really, if the board can focus on coming to an agreement around our direction moving forward with measures, and really if we could look at it through 3 lenses, determine the district's direction on potential ballot measures and timelines to place those measures. The idea of a bond, whether it's a full bond or target bond list of projects, and then a parcel tax, a renewal and an increase, and then the consideration of a square footage. And those by no means are to limit the conversation, just more of conversation starters, if you will. This is the slide that we brought to the board at our budget presentation of when the state looked at potential measures being on the ballot. Again, with this election, it's 67% or 66, 2/3% to pass a parcel tax, no matter what election cycle you're on. However, when you have the general election, a bond measure is at 55% threshold to pass at certain times or at certain election cycles. So going into a little bit of defining what the district need is, because we should never place a measure on a ballot if there wasn't a need. We don't do it half-heartedly. We know there's a lot of time and effort, and we know it's an impact on our community. And so going through that need, I think the first one is the easiest one to talk about, is one we just brought up with the approval of the facility master plan by the board. Certainly, I think there was needs at all 25 schools. We do not receive funds from the state that sufficiently allow us to address all the facility needs we have as a school district. And that's where a bond has been very successful in our community in the past. We are finishing the dollars that were in our last bond cycle, and then we have our future needs tied to the facility master plan. Second one is a parcel tax. We had a 7-year parcel tax, which began in 2015, 2016. Again, as a reminder for the board, that brings in $8.67 million. And as it stands right now, those dollars go directly to supporting our staff. That's 80 full-time equivalent teacher and support staff positions in our district. And just as an important note, the cost of an election for a parcel tax does vary by election cycle. The next 3 slides all show very similar information, just a few different ways to present it for the board. So it's the options of when we can place ballot measures on the ballot. And so starting with November 20th is the next cycle. And then those dates on the top represent the month and then the year that we could run that election. With the bonds, as you could see in this, there's only a few times where you can run a bond measure in which the requirement for passing would be at the 55% threshold. Another way to look at it here for 2021, yellow represents a vote by mail option. Green represents the general obligation bond. Again, that's the 55% threshold in it. And then the white or the non-color represent just any election. And that's for 2021. And then the next slide is the same information, but for the year 2022. What I would like to point out though is the March and June. March may actually be a green color. And I had actually reached out to county register of voters. They've been very, very helpful. Appreciate their time. There is likelihood that June or the general election would actually be in March. And so that color could switch. So green could be in March. We won't have all the information yet, but I'll continue to work on that. And should I hear something different, I will update the board on that. And again, we're going to move back to the discussion outcome tonight that we had talked about in the beginning. I'll take any questions. If not, I'll turn it over back to you, Lori.
Okay, great. So I do want to give an opportunity for clarifying questions. And I also know that Phyllis and I owe you an update as your committee members on ballot action as well. So does anybody have any clarifying questions they want to ask now before Phyllis and I update you on the committee work? Jerry, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I have two questions, Jeff. So first of all, a couple of weeks ago, we had approved 2 contracts for consultants to look at bond measures. When can we expect a report from them, and in what form would that report take? What kind of content might it, what kind of other information might it provide us?
Correct. We did have 2 approved vendors to help with our feasibility, drafting potential language for a bond measure. Our plan was to bring that back to the board at the end of July with potential resolutions for the board to approve at that point. Our focus had been on a bond at that point in time and not on a parcel tax, just based on where we thought the most success would be for us as a district. Obviously, we have a need for both a parcel tax and a bond. We didn't think a parcel tax would pass at that point. We were investigating the bond. And so we can still bring that information back, but the plan was to bring it back at the end of July.
All right, and then when we get that information back at the end of July, would it also include information on the estimated level of support in the community for the bond? My understanding was, rather than a survey polling method, we're basically going with some sort of aggregate modeling method this time.
That's correct. We were using a different model. So that is correct, Jerry. It was going to be a different than the normal percentage. Obviously, the percentage we brought back to the board for the parcel tax was off by a margin of error greater than 6% or a standard deviation and a half. And so we didn't think it was an effective approach to bring that back to the board in that format.
Okay, great. Thank you. My second question is around the timeline. So we're going to hear from the CAC sometime in the September-October timeframe. I presume we would need to, if we decided to go with a bond, to have to make the decision to place that on the ballot before we hear from the CAC. My question then is, when we put the language for the bond forward, do we need to nail down the list of projects that it funds, or is that something that can be left open for later?
We would want
my question. Does that make sense?
It does. We would want to include that in the language of the resolution.
I see. So we would have to make some decisions on what projects to include before we hear back from the CAC then, with this current timeline of how things work?
That is correct. So we do have to place a measure on the ballot in early August, which is why we would use the first board, or if we were going to place it, we would use that board meeting at the last Thursday of July to then bring it down to the register of voters in the first week of August.
Great. Okay.
And so that would all take place before.
All right, thanks. And just one quick question. I know I said 2, maybe just one more, Lori. So you mentioned the possibility of square footage. Have we done any sort of modeling, or do you have any other things to talk about, or is that sort of, you might do that as a result of discussion today? Because we've always gone with a flat parcel, and so I think I understand that well. Square footage is new to the community. So do we have any information on what form that might take, or not at this point?
Not enough at this point. We have done some early preliminary look. I think it would probably be suiting for me to turn over some of it to Lori and Phyllis to give an update of where the committee is at. But I do hope if that's something we would like, or if the board as a whole would like us to investigate that, it would be something we should start now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've finished, Lori. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Great. So Phyllis, you want to kick us off here on sort of updating, and then I'll pepper in where, if anything else jogs my memory?
Sure, absolutely. And I would absolutely like you to add whatever you want to what I'm going to say. As all of you know, you sort of deputized Lori and me to work on the campaign for the parcel tax in March. And we have continued to work with that committee. It's chaired by Dan Hallaby, and a longtime former parent and longtime volunteer in our district. And he will continue to work with the campaign committee, whatever we decide to do. He's agreed to do that. So thank you, Dan, if you're watching. So this committee began thinking about what kind of strategies do we want to use going forward, given that we lost an election in March. And as Jeff mentioned a few minutes ago, we began looking primarily at a bond. I mean, we desperately need money in all areas. We need operational money, we need capital money. And so the question is, what do we do first? Kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg? And we began focusing on going for a bond in November. And that was the proposal that we were thinking we would bring to the board. Well, a lot of stuff has happened since March. And now we're thinking maybe that's not the best way to go. So maybe the board wants to think about going in a different direction. So that's kind of where the committee has been, talking more about strategy, working, as Jerry mentioned, with Connell Lind and PredictWise to kind of figure out what we would do no matter what we go for. So this committee that Dan is chairing is really the committee that is going to try to sell whatever it is the board decides they want to go for. So I'd like to move on to my opinion, and this is just me. I'm not speaking for the committee now. But my opinion is that we should not go for anything in November. And there are some reasons for that, several reasons. We're going to make a lot of the things we're going to be doing over the next 4 or 5 months are going to be controversial in our community. We have some pretty draconian budget cuts coming up. We have a reopening plan for reopening school. We have the CAC recommendation, which may recommend that we close schools. We have people in our district who are unemployed and who knows how long they will be. And the election in November is going to be very, very noisy given what's going on at the federal level. So what I would like us to consider, and I'm not necessarily married to this, so I want to hear what everybody has to say because it could change my mind, but I would like us to not do anything in November, explore some kind of a tax measure in the spring. And I don't know whether that's a parcel tax or a square footage tax. I know we have some interest in the community about square footage, and I'm interested in learning more about that as well. And the Fremont Union High School District in 2017 did a study on square footage tax. And I think there are 3 local districts that currently have them in place, West Contra Costa County, Alameda, and Berkeley. So in response to Jeff, I would like to recommend that we at least explore that to see if it's a viable way for us to go. So Lori, you're on.
Okay. So I will, let's see, add that I would echo everything Phyllis said, that I think that a lot of the conversations to date have been around trying to keep up the strategy with the very rapidly changing landscape, right? At the same time, we've been dealing with the rapidly changing landscape because of COVID and the recession and everything else with our district budget, with our, certainly our classroom learning and distance learning, you know, so too is it made a sort of constantly changing landscape for what to do about this particular election cycle. I will add in maybe a little bit of other data points that we've talked about and that I've learned about. You know, there were many more districts considering a ballot initiative for November several months ago than there appear to be now. The list has narrowed significantly. Those who are going out are probably I know for sure that there are 5 that are still considering it. 3 are looking at bonds and 2 are looking at parcels. The 2 that are looking at parcels, you know, have certainly expressed that they know it's, even with favorable polling, it's going to be an uphill battle. You know, haven't made any final decisions yet, but are certainly having conversations around that. I will also address that, you know, certainly I think we're all aware of the sort of request for more information around square footage. I would echo what Phyllis said. I had a long conversation with a couple of, with one of the FUHSD trustees who actually headed up their effort in 2017 to really dig in on it. Learned a lot of interesting stuff about some interesting data out of Larry Stone's office, out of our county assessor's office, that I think it would be good for us to explore. Also know that they polled that, and the reason that they didn't move forward with a square footage parcel tax was that the polling was very challenging, and that at the time the delta between polling and ability to pass a square footage measure was bigger than they thought they could ever overcome with a voter education campaign. So I think there is a lot for us to explore there, but there's also a lot of challenges there. To Phyllis's point, there are some districts that have successfully gotten them in place. They've also been subject to court challenges. Some of those court challenges have been successful and have forced those districts to go back and revisit things. Some of those court challenges have just been sort of a nuisance that they've had to deal with. So I think we definitely have our work cut out for us in learning more about that, if it's something that you know, we want to seriously consider together. Let's see, I think Phyllis shared her opinion, so I'll go ahead and share mine now, but again, happy to have a conversation. I'm really torn about what to do here. I think on the one hand, all of the reasons why you would logically conclude that this is going to be a very tough cycle to do any ballot initiative are true. This is a constantly changing landscape. It's not a particularly favorable landscape, both from what the statewide polling for school services has shown, as well as you know, what we know about the economy and about how contentious and noisy this election is likely to be. There's going to be some pretty contentious propositions that look like they're going to for sure be on the ballot come November, in addition to you know, all levels of elections, especially the federal, which is going to be a chaotic year. Let's just put it that way. On the flip side, I, you know, feel like we are in a dialogue with our community right now about the reality of our situation and about sort of the direness of our situation, and about the fact that we have real needs, and that it is incumbent upon us as a board to continue to express what those needs are. And like any ballot measure, it's up to the community as to what they choose to do with that. And there's a part of me that says either we don't go at all, like Phyllis is saying, or we go big, and maybe we even consider looking at doing both. Because the fact of the matter is we have big needs as far as our facilities go, with you know, both safety as well as maintenance. And I think that we would be remiss if we don't talk to our community about those needs, and that if we don't go out this November for a bond for those, so bonds being, you know, in the facility category, things in buildings, you know, if we don't express to our community what those needs are this November and give them a chance to weigh in on that, it's 18 months to 2 years before we can do that again at the 55% threshold. So we're talking all the way until either March or June of 2022, if not November of 2022, before we would potentially be able to take any action because we've raised any funds on our facilities needs. And then, you know, when I say go big, the other piece being the parcel piece. You know, I don't know, do we believe the sort of our most recent polling, which was our March election, where our voters told us, you know, we're not willing to support you? Or do we believe that people just weren't sure then how dire our situation was compared to sort of their uncomfortableness with what was going on with current events at that time, at the time of the election. So I guess that's the conversation I'm hoping that I'll hear from the rest of you on is where you're at on sort of that notion of this just isn't the time, which we've certainly heard from some community members, versus, you know what, we need to put a stake in the ground and say what our needs are, and we need to tell our community loud and clear what those needs are. And I guess if they don't support what those needs are, then that sends a message too and makes our job clearer in terms of what decisions have to be made because of that. So I'll stop there and open it up to anybody else. I do want to say that I know we have at least one public comment on this item, so I do want to get everybody in, and then we do need to be mindful, and you guys can help me remember that we have at least one public comment on this item as well.
Go ahead.
Satish, go ahead.
Okay, so thanks, Phyllis and Laurie. I think that gave actually a very good background. A couple of things, like now typically what we do is that, or we have done in past as well, that we take kind of a survey before any ballot measure, right? How community is going to react. So I would like to see that whether we can do a survey rather than just outrightly saying that we don't need in November and let's move into spring, because I'm not sure spring is going to be better either, right? Because November is very close, we know the challenges, but in spring the same challenges probably could continue because this whole year is not going to be better, right? Spring, November to spring is not going to have a significant change. Maybe a little bit economy may be better, but I don't know, overall we will be out of all these challenges. So I think, I don't know how much is the cost for doing this survey. I know that we had to pay, but probably it's worth even asking a question. If we go with, this November election, how you would react, or if you prefer it, a little later, how it would be. Because I know that last survey, we were kind of very close to the threshold, actually, the feedback what we got. So we are not even sure, we would go beyond our threshold, the number, right? The percentage, what we are looking, 65%, 67%, whatever. So I think I would like to hear that if possible, we should explore that if we can do a survey, and then based on that thing we decide. Second portion is square footage part of it, right? We have been hearing that a lot, and actually, in fact, last year we had a detailed discussion. I was part of that discussion with Dr. Baker, Jeff, and even our lawyers and consultant and everybody. And I think what we discussed and things. At some point of time, we have to do this, right? So it's not. Is it the right time? I don't know. But if we keep moving this towards right, like saying that we can, we are not sure we are going to win that, or that's going to help us out or not, kind of. But I think when are we going to do that? I think some point of time we definitely need to explore, spend some time on that, whether this is the right way to go or not. Because otherwise this will keep coming before the election every time, whether we should go for it, and we will move towards right. So I would like to request actually to have a real focused discussion on this square footage, some study on that. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Great, thanks, Satish. Sylvia or Jerry, you want to get in here at all?
I was wondering if it would be possible to hear from the public before our deliberations, or would you prefer us to give our initial thoughts first and then do the public comments?
Let's finish one round of initial thoughts, then let's take the public comment and let's keep going.
Sure. In that case, would it be all right if I went next, Laurie?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Right, thanks. So we have a couple of items here, so I'll just go down them one by one. With respect to a parcel tax this November, the polling right now that at that state level from the Public Policy Institute, 40-ish%, I can't imagine they're off by that much. And so right now, my mind probably isn't on, I probably will not support a parcel tax in November at this point. Really, I understand we have needs, but at the same time, I think demonstrating need is necessary, but it's not sufficient for a successful passage. I would like to see probably some sort of a parcel tax in the spring. I think that meeting that Satish alluded to about some discussion on square footage, I am very interested in exploring that more, and so one of the things I would ask is that we ask staff to bring back a report on square footage as soon as possible. I think if we do go down that route, there is going to be some amount of voter education, as you alluded to, Lori. So it's not something we want to do 2 months before. So insofar as we can sort of understand what that option is as soon as possible, I would like to ask for that, basically a staff study on square footage. In terms of the bonds, I'm sort of, so there are two things here. I think I'm troubled by the fact that we would need to, we don't really know what the fall's going to look like, what the climate's going to look like, and the fact that some of the points that Phyllis alluded to, that we don't know if we're going to be, reconfiguring and shutting down some of these sites. And so going out for a bond at that point with some of that not clear, it's sort of because I can imagine, for instance, if we were to do full distance learning into October, and then we're asking the community for hundreds of millions of dollars to refresh the facilities. And I understand one is a short-term, one's a long-term thing, but just from a messaging standpoint. And so, but what I would like to see, since we've, gone ahead and spent, I don't know, 20, 30K on these vendors to do the modeling, I'd like to see what the results are. I probably wouldn't want us to shut that off before, or we'll swing one way or the other before we actually get the data that we paid for come back to help inform us for that decision. So that's sort of where I am right now, Lori. Not in favor of the parcel tax in November. I would like to see it in the spring. I'd like to see us start the study on the square footage. And then on the bonds, I'd like to see the results from the modeling come back before making a decision one way or the other. Thanks.
Great. Okay, Sylvia, you want to give us some initial impressions, and then I'll take the public comment?
Sure. So actually, I had a question for Jeff about the schedule for the bond measures. So for the 55% threshold, you said it wouldn't be until, let's see, June 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that
is correct.
Okay, so does that mean if we did it before then, it would be a higher threshold, or what's the change?
I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. So you can run a parcel or a bond at any of these election cycles. If you run a bond at the non-general election cycle, it would be at the same 2/3 requirement that the parcel tax is.
I see. So there's only when it's at a general election or a primary. I'm sorry, is there a difference between primary and general?
So when we have, and that's where that June to March comes up as really a big deal when we look at 2022, because depending on when that election is run, that will determine whether or not that March of that year would be that 55% threshold, or if it would be the 2/3 at 67% passing.
I see.
And then June would be the opposite of that. So there's probably likelihood of that switching.
Okay. No, thank you. And that's where I was getting confused, because I remember you saying the March.
Right. I'm sorry.
But it'll be one or the other, not both. It will either be March or June of 2022, but we won't know until they determine when the primary is.
Got it. But then regardless, there's no election in 2021 that would give us that opportunity.
No.
Okay. And then I had a question, maybe Lori, I don't know if you would be the right one to know the answer to this. With the schools and community first measure that's going to be coming up in November, I guess I'm curious, or my thoughts are, because that one's gaining a lot of exposure or getting more known. And I think there's a lot of different ideas about that one as well. I think there's a part of me that's concerned, similar to Phyllis and Jerry, that the controversy around that one as well may end up impacting anything that we do in November too.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of the school districts are considering right now, Sylvia, is it will be similar to when in March there was the statewide bond that was on the ballot at the same time, that had the unfortunate numbering of being called Prop 13, which then confused people to think that the statewide bond was actually, education bond was actually going to affect their Prop 13 somehow. And so they think that, one of the things TBWB talked about in sort of debriefing our Measure O election was you know, that there might have been some voter confusion, which just basically was like, I don't like that Prop 13 is on the ballot at all. Therefore, any education taxes are bad, and so therefore I'm voting no on all of them, right? And you know, we will never know how much or little that impacted it. We just know that up and down the state, education measures did not do well in March, and so you know, again, in the same way, schools and communities first, because it does touch a portion of Proposition 13, not the entire thing, but only the commercial property tax portion of Prop 13, looking to take away the benefits that corporations have had in having the same protections that residential properties have had. That obviously the opposition message is going to be very much focused on they're coming for your Prop 13 protections, homeowners, and that will be the lead message of the opposition to our schools and communities first. And so therefore, I think there is definitely some concern that that will impact, again, any tax measure, school-related tax measure that's on the ballot, because if there's confusion, then, you know, that's always the point of opposition campaigns to propositions, is to cause confusion, because confusion makes people vote no. When they're not confident, they just vote no. So, you know, I think there will be, it probably will be the noisiest proposition on the ballot come November. So I think that definitely is part of the discussion here is you know, how much or not that concerns us. You know, it is, at the end of the day, they are entirely different things. And so the question becomes, can voter education, let's hypothetically say we were continuing with our plan of a bond, you know, could our voter education overcome that? You know, possibly. But, you know, it certainly also is going to be talked about. There will be a lot of talk of Proposition 13 and school taxes in general. And, you know, if there's a negative cast to that carries over onto us, is certainly a concern we have to consider for November. So that said, schools and communities first is actually improving their polling over time right now. So, you know, you know, I think you always hope that any voter will do their best to educate themselves about what is on their ballot for real themselves. And so, you know, you hope that with voter education that people will take the time to understand what our schools and communities first is, and also potentially what any measure that any school district would have on the ballot is, and make a decision based on the facts. But, you know, like I said, campaigns are often about confusion, trying to confuse if you're looking for the no vote. So
And then,
Lori, oh, sorry, please.
just to Satish's point about the surveying. So Jeff, maybe throwing it back to you, with the consultants that we have contracted with, when do we expect to hear something from them?
We were slated to bring information back to the board at the end of July is when the information would be set to return.
And that information was specifically for a bond?
That is correct.
Okay. And then also just to clarify that when we talk about the community and the voter community, it's not this as simple as sending out a survey to the parents, right? Because in the community, the people that are voting, maybe folks whose kids have gone through the schools a long time ago, right? So it's a much larger community than just a parent survey.
Yeah,
it would be. Okay. That's correct.
So I think, and I don't know, we would have to check with Dan, who chairs the committee, but I think we can ask the consultants to bring back to us, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, to bring back to us something about the appetite from the community for either a bond or some sort of a tax measure. Do you think that they would have time to do that for us by the end of July?
I'm happy to ask them if that is the direction that the board like to go.
I mean, I don't know. It sounds like people are interested in some sort of a survey, and maybe we don't want to just know the appetite for bond. Maybe we want to know the appetite for both.
Yeah, I want to insist that, right? The reason is like, if we just assume that the community is not going to support us in November, I'm not sure then they are going to support us in spring either. So I think this will be keep going out of our hand when we are desperately in need of some support. So I would like to see that, if anytime, doesn't matter, like, if you have a potential passing of this, then that'll be the best. So I think I would like to hear from the community before even we put it across.
So let me get our public comment in, or if we've had more than one come in, and then I have an idea I want to float. So Leslie, I know we have Sudha Kasimseti who was going to make a comment on this, and then did you have any others that had come in?
Yeah, we do. We have Sudha followed by Will Flewelling.
Okay, great. Sudha, if we'll get you unmuted, and if you can go ahead, just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and we'll let you know when that time is up. And if you could please wrap up with the sentence you're on at that point.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining.
Hi, this is Sudha Kasimseti, and I'm representing myself today. And I respected board members, and I really thank Lori for attending our focus group meeting on June 15th. And one of the topics that came out, which was of large interest from the members who attended the meeting and even post the meeting, was square feet tax model. And I did some research, and I did talk to director of Berkeley Unified School District today, and had a very in-length conversation with her, and took some notes, and I'd be more than happy to forward that notes to you post the meeting. But one of the main things that I do know that model has been there since 1983 for them, and not like us who we are trying to introduce this new. But what some of the pointers that she gave me was how we can also, using the law, come up with some exemptions. Like for example, they have, exempting low-income seniors, households with social security income, nonprofits, business, so that we can get more support on this. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of us are in support for this tax model, and we would like to see this go, and let us know how we can help from the community point of view in expediting this model and making it happen. Thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you. And Will, can we get Will unmuted so Will can make his public comment?
I am here.
Hi, go ahead, please.
Thank you, board, for hearing me for the moment. Thank you, Lori. Dr. Baker, you will be missed. So I had an interesting position in this last election, and I'll admit, it was demoralizing and heartbreaking to lose that thing. But I also have a different position where for the past year, I've been the community at large member of the Measure H Bond Oversight Committee. And I've seen all the amazing work we've been able to do with that one over the last 10 years. But it's expiring, and our schools still need help. The window really worries me. Timing is so important with elections, and I get all the noise and I get all the messiness, but if we can't do this again for another 2 years, some of our facilities are really going to struggle and suffer. And I think timing is really important with the bond. I'm not even going to touch on parcel tax, but the bond, I really want you all to think about this time. The timing is really important, just because of the next election that will be there for that 55% is in 2 years. And I hate scare tactics. When I put on my marketing hat, I can't stand scare tactics, but it's crisis time. And so this is a good opportunity for you as a board and as a district and all of us to really get together and start learning as a community how the schools are funded and what we can do to fix it. And the community is how we can solve the problem. We need to get closer to our neighbors. All of our friends around us spend so much more per kid on their taxes than we do in our district. And we have to get up to that level if we're going to keep this wonderful staff that keeps our kids so amazing. And I'm going to end on that note. Just please consider the timing on the bond. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I said I'd take public comment, and Leslie, do we have any others that have come in? Just checking back.
We do not have any more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So and then I said I'd float an idea. I guess what I'm hearing from all of you is, and maybe we can have another round of feedback after I say this, and if I'm off, totally okay, is that there doesn't seem to be, I think we all feel like there's time to explore further and also to build an education campaign around the parcel, and that maybe looking out to spring for the parcel is where we think we might be at, but still a lot of work to be done between now and then. You know, we have two opportunities potentially for a vote by mail election in spring of 2021, I think March and May. So I'm sure Jeff could bring us back some more information about, you know, potential costs in addition to everything else we've talked about, just because that would be under the new vote by mail system that we haven't been through yet now that the county has switched to the Voters' Choice Act. And so then that leaves us the question of the bond in November. And what I'm hearing from some of you is that maybe there's still some more questions around what Jerry raised, what Satish raised about, could we get any more information about, from PredictWise and Connell about what their advice and thinking and sort of information gathering has shown them. And I'm thinking because we added the special board meeting in the beginning of July, that there might be an opportunity, since we're sort of already doing a study session then, to think about whether or not we thought there was an opportunity for some more information to come back. And perhaps maybe a draft resolution for a bond, knowing that then, just because of the calendar that is set out by the registrar of voters, you know, with the committee, the date we were always having to work on was that last board meeting in July, because then we need to be able to file with the registrar of voters for that election in the very beginning of August. So if we're going to take action on a bond, it does need to be at that last board meeting in July. And so perhaps I'm floating an idea that we have another item come back on that July 9th special board meeting that we're calling, but I want to give staff a chance to weigh in on that, as well as fellow board members, because I'm catching everybody, I think, probably a little bit off guard with that. So.
Oh no, I'm all for that.
Midnight, Craig, midnight.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think for me that makes a lot of sense, Lori. I actually think your proposal is very reasonable. I think given that we've already signed these contracts and paid these folks to come up with data, it's very reasonable for us to wait for the data to come back. Otherwise, I don't know why we would have approved these contracts before to kind of go ahead with it. I think I really like to take a data-driven approach to it. I understand there's need. I completely get what Will's talking about. I have 2 kids at Kennedy. That's probably one of the campuses I need the most upgrades. Trust me, I've been in that gym when it's 100 degrees. So I get all that. But I think what I'm really concerned about is the same needs were there back in Measure O in March. And so unless there's something we can point to where we could do better, because I saw a very good effort, and so I get the need. I want the money to come in, but I also want to be practical about this, because it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of volunteers, it's a lot of money that go into these things. And so I guess I agree with what you're saying. I was listening carefully to what you said, Lori. I didn't hear anything I disagreed with. I think square footage, very much would like to see, like I said, a study on that. If we can have, so I guess there are 2 things I would maybe ask for to sort of amend or maybe add on to what you proposed. One is if we could have a special meeting to study the information and then have a separate meeting to vote on it. I don't want to have to vote on this the same meeting where the information comes in, right? And so Jeff, you had talked about they might be able to share this at the end of July, but if we have to vote at the end of July, that might, I just like to break those up into 2 meetings. So that's the number 1 ask. The number 2 ask is, I remember when we reviewed the facility master plan, we talked about there will be another opportunity for us to look at what are the list of projects on that. I know we had done a categorization. I like to have the opportunity to give input on fine tuning that. I prefer not to do an up and down vote on a package that staff has assembled without input from the board. So insofar as if we could, those are the two things I would ask for Lori to maybe add on to the proposal you just made. Thanks.
So in order for I'm just thinking through and reflecting on what you're saying, Jerry, in order for us to have an item on the July 9th agenda that would be some data coming back as well as potentially a draft resolution so that we're not voting in the same meeting that we're seeing it for the first time. Right. Would that draft resolution be around this list, this refined list? I'm not sure how to get to a refined list that gets to a draft resolution where we're not voting in the same meeting. So I'm trying to.
Right. I wonder if it's possible for staff or if you have to come back with, in that July 9th meeting, a list of projects that would go on the bond, what we're targeting there, and then we can discuss that.
You know, another thing we might think about is, if the decision of the board is to go for a bond in November, does it have to be $480 million? Maybe we go for a $250 million bond or something less, which even puts more burden on the staff, because then they'd have to come back with proposals for both a large bond and a smaller one in terms of, as you say, Jerry, in terms of projects. But I don't know if that's worth considering a different amount of money on a bond.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I think I pretty much I'm with you guys. And I think we are coming back again. We want to hear the community. We want to hear the feedback, what it is. And I'm not comfortable in fixing a specific, either number or spring kind of things. I'm not comfortable in that yet. I want to hear, what's a possibility of, really, we are trying to win. We are trying to pass this, right? So what we can do in November or what we can do in spring kind of thing. So I want to hear that, and that feedback and those data is definitely going to help us out in making the decision. And I am with you, Jerry, in terms of first let's hear that, then we can vote later. We can think a little bit over that. But I'm not sure we will have enough data for the square footage stuff by July 9th, because I know
that would be. Yeah, so what I'm proposing is that we table that and get through November 1st, deciding whether or not we're going to do the bond in November 1st, and then bring back the idea of the parcel and what do we do with that on a different timeline. And that may be before November if that's where staff thinks the work needs to start on discussing and building towards that, but it would be not for a November election cycle for the parcel, for the square footage.
So, Lori, how do you feel about that? You have extensive knowledge of these issues, and I felt you actually made very strong arguments for both pro and against, and then I couldn't tell. I thought maybe you're leaning towards pro, but I just felt in your deliberations, you gave very good reasons of why we should do it in November. You gave very good reasons why we wouldn't want to do it in November. I didn't get a clear sense of where you are. Would you mind sort of?
Yeah, part of me says, that as we're going through everything we're going to have to go through in the fall, as far as our budget and as far as the outcome of the CAC, and that as uncomfortable as that process is going to be, to not have a parcel on the ballot that tries to get at I hate to say it because I'm at the same time I'm dissing on the state for saying it's totally a gimmick and unfair for you to be hanging out these federal dollars that may or may not come. Here I am saying, should we have a parcel on the ballot in November where we're hanging out some dollars and we're saying we're setting some stakes in the ground, we're making some decisions, but hey, community, if you pass this parcel like we hoped that would have happened last March, we might be able to at least mitigate a small portion of it. Differently, but gosh, this is where I started. This is why I started by saying I'm really torn here, Jerry, because I think there's two measures here. One is, what do we think can pass, and is that expense and the risk worth it? And the other conversation is, what is the conversation we need to have with our community? And I'm probably conflating those two things in my own mind too much. And I'm glad you're pushing me, because it's making me sort of think through, if that's the conversation we need to have with the community, does it really matter whether or not it's on the ballot or not in November? The only reason it would matter, like I said, is if we really legitimately thought an amount of money coming in would change the decisions we have to make this fall. And frankly, I don't think it will. And so to your point, you're probably right that pushing it out and into spring, which is why the proposal I'm sort of making, that maybe we take our time as with not deciding tonight one way or the other, bond, no bond for November, and instead say we need another chance to revisit it in the beginning of July, knowing that we're still ultimately going to have to make a decision by the end of July because of the election cycle timeline with the ROV. But I'm fine letting go of the idea of a parcel for November, and it sounds like I don't hear anybody else raising that they think that's a good idea, and I don't have a compelling reason to, really, beat my fists on that one. So, I'm okay letting that one, just be an idea that was tossed out and it's tossed out. Yeah. Does that help at all? I don't know.
Yeah. I'll add one small portion of here. So I think your first, when you started, Laurie, I think I like that. You said that this is probably, the maximum number of times we discussed about budget issue now. Actually, last 3 meetings or last 3 board meetings, I think the community is well aware. We have well-attended communities, like over 300 people, right? And it's a fact. We have a problem, right? And I think people are aware, and I can see the discussions around in different forums, and very active community. Everybody's interested in knowing what we are going to do. And I think the fact is fact. There is a big problem here in front of us. So probably this is the best time for us to say that this is the problem we are coming. Okay, I'm not for putting it in November, but I'm still saying, because by delaying it, I think that heat or that that intensity of it could reduce a little bit. But right now, everybody is aware what's going on, and there's all the data sheet is there. Everything we are making it as open as possible, right? And this is the right way. I think people are aware, and they have the right to ask any questions. And this is I think every board meeting in last 3 meetings, we have been discussing about budget issues. Probably we may not get this kind of opportunity even for the future.
So I'm thinking that, I don't know, we have 200 and some odd people in today's meeting. We've had 300 in the last 2. We have thousands of voters. I think no matter what we decide to do, it's going to require a pretty heavy lift in terms of educating the rest of the community that doesn't attend our board meetings about what dire straits we're in. I'm not convinced that the entire community sees the urgency. I think the people that attend our board meetings do, because as Satish said, we talk about it all the time. I'm not sure the others do. So I think whatever we do, we need to have a pretty I don't know what word to use, a robust education program around the financial picture that we're facing.
Yeah, can I add on to that? I was going to mention that I think it was Sylvia asked the difference between doing surveying of the broader community and not just our families. What I would suggest is that it would be good to survey just our families, not so much about should we or shouldn't we, because we're going to get a very high rating on yes, we should, because they send kids to schools that they think should be in better shape. But what you can assess is, so are you going to do anything about it? The problem I have with the parcel tax is that you had a hardy band of few who did everything. They did an incredible job, but it was so few people. And sure, people say we need the money, but the people who are going to actually pass it, let's say you have 58% of the people when you survey that say we will pass it. Well, that's a narrow margin to the 55% on a bond. So how are you going to tip it over that it works? It's going to be our families, our parents. And if you don't get a commitment from them up front, I'm telling you, it won't pass at 55%. It will not. So one of the reasons you survey now is to get it out there and you tell them, right? Because if all we're doing is educating, I'm telling you, they hit delete on the button. But if you say, we want to survey you, here's the problem we're having, we're not going to pass it without you, should we go out or shouldn't we, make it, more sophisticated than that. But if you're going to go down this route, start the effort now of educating through surveying, but make it clear, it's not us doing it, it's you doing it. Are you in? Should we do it? Will we pass it? And if you start getting a groundswell from that, I think then I actually do think there is a possibility of passing a bond in November.
Yeah, I think I think that sounds spot on. I also think, I totally understand the drive to want this to be data driven. I also reflect back on, our polling last time and how much we got burned on that, right? Ultimately, our polling said we were supposed to pass by 69% and only 59% of our voters approved it, a little bit less than that, right? So,
But Lori, I'm sorry, I just have to push on that a little bit. It happens a lot that, the pollsters tell you, you don't count on this number. They said actually the margin was such that it could go either way. And there are a lot of things that happened in between. And the number one thing that happened is you didn't have anywhere near the Army out there making this happen. And so, this happens all the time where we thought it was going to be a little bit better, but it was down here. But the people who do those polls, they'll tell you that's not that extraordinary when you don't mobilize an army in the way that you would hope to do. So I just caution you against just sort of sticking your heads in the sand relative to how are we going to get there, right? And if you cannot sense that you have at least the school community that will drive it, not because they're not the only voters, clearly, right? There's way more voting actually than have kids in schools. So you have to get to those other people, but who's getting to those other people? It's got to be, that army has to come from them first and foremost.
Yeah. Sylvia, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Do you have anything else you want to add on this item?
And it's mostly just echoing what everybody else has said.
Okay. That's fine.
I think about on my street, I live in a little cul-de-sac and there's 7 houses. Of the 7, just my family and the family across have kids that are still at home, right? The others have been retired for a long time, and the conversations I have with them are, because their kids went to the schools such a long time ago, and so I agree with Craig that yeah, like the majority of the voters in the community are not parents in the district anymore, and so the amount of education that it's going to take does have to come from grassroots. It does have to come from your neighbors, from the folks that are in our district and are able to talk to their neighbors and are able to talk to the folks in their community. And I guess I'm just wondering, how does shelter in place impact that? How does it, on the one hand, we're not able to see people in person. On the other hand, we've had, 200 people at our board meeting that would never show up normally if we were just, at the district office. And so maybe this is an opportunity to utilize some of that. And I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud about it. It could go a couple different ways. I'm wary still because November does have a lot of contentious things going on. And having also talked to, again, neighbors and about schools and community and just a lot of, and a lot of the other contentious things that are happening, I'm worried that there's going to be kind of a no down the ballot because of the different things that are on the ballot. So, I'm in agreement with Satish and Jerry. We need data. We've got the consultants, have them do the surveys for us. I like Craig's idea of also, checking in with the community and not just on like whether or not we need it, but also like how much can they help us to get it done.
Jeff and Stacy, is where we're going with this, asking you guys to bring back something at that first meeting in July that helps inform whether or not we want to bring back something at the final meeting in July to take action on. Does that work for you guys?
Do you want me to go first, Stacey? I'm sorry. Do you want me?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I think it does. I think where I feel fairly confident that we will be able to bring information back based on the discussion was around a project list. I think obviously the board just approved a facilities master plan. I do believe that we can bring back a different way to categorize the projects so that the board could have a discussion there. I definitely feel like we can bring a resolution back. I'm a little bit concerned about the resolution covering the project list. So I think if there could be some flexibility from the board on bringing a resolution, that will definitely need a lot of fine tuning. And I think just making sure our community understands that the resolution is more about the language, not so much the project list, and maybe we can work on how we communicate that piece of it. And then what I heard, and maybe I want to make sure I followed up in the right way because I wasn't sure if it was just what Phil said, but the idea of bringing back various bond sizes, bond capacity based on the project list, which I do think I can bring back for that meeting if that's what the board would like. So that was the only question I had. The other thing that I think I need more information, a little bit of time to respond back to the board on is what type of data we would be able to have July 9th. And I'm happy to put that back to a board memo to update on what I think is possible during that time after I talk to our vendors.
And then, Jeff, I'd like to add my support to Phyllis's request about whether or not they can expand the original scope of the contract or maybe modify it somehow so we get some data or whatever sort of modeling they can do on the parcel tax, the support for the parcel tax. I think given that the approach she's taking is not a survey-based one, but a modeling-based. I understand that if you weren't going to do a survey, you can't squeeze one in the last week or two. But given that this is a model-based approach, that might be feasible. So I just wanted to add my support to Phyllis's request on that one.
Jerry, are you looking for that at this meeting in the beginning of July, or are you just adding that for like over time, we'd like to see that?
Over time, because unless someone really is pushing for parcel tax in November, I think the important thing is to focus on getting the appropriate data or whatever we can get for the bond. So yes, thank you for that clarification, Lori. Yeah.
Anybody else? So Jeff, if I hear you, Stacy, did you have anything else you want to add to what Jeff said?
No, I just wanted to make sure Jeff had all the information he needed to bring it back to the 9th.
Okay.
Can I ask a process question?
Please.
I know there's a lot of weight being put on the 9th, and I know that was it's hard to find a date in the summer. Were there not, I don't know if it was Renee or others that know what the possibilities were, because you might, even if it's only 4 of you, or even 3, you might want to consider if there's a date to set aside between then and November. No, I'm sorry, and see, I don't even remember anymore. And July 30. Thank you.
It felt like we were all available on both the 9th and the 16th. So maybe we hold the 16th as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would give you a second cut at of something if you need to pass a resolution. If you decide, hey, we're going to go forward on the July 30th, then you'd have a second cut at it.
Mm-hmm. Is everybody okay with that, holding that 16th just as a placeholder on your calendar in case we needed it?
Good for me.
Okay. Since we already that date, Jeff, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say but we would, no matter what, I think it's important that we keep the 9th. So the 16th be the backup, because if there's any actions, we do need a little bit of time to turn around something. That's my only ask.
Yeah, no, I was saying add it. Yes, exactly. No.
Thank you.
The whole point was to have a second cut before that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Before the action at the end of the month. Okay.
Yeah,
so anything else on this item that we need to wrap on here? I do want to acknowledge we did have another public comment request that came in after we had closed public comment for this item. So I'm going to encourage whoever that is to please go ahead and send that in electronically, knowing that you're going to have a couple more meetings in July to make that public comment as well. So since we had already concluded public comment on this item. So anything else on this one before I move on there? Everybody good?
Yep.
All right. So moving on. Oops, my screen went black over here. We are moving on to 9.1, our discussion action item on recommendation for reopening of schools. And Stacy and Allison are leading us off on this one.
Stacy, before you jump in, can I just get one point of clarification? I know we put it as discussion action, but I believe we realized that there's no official action being taken at all. I just wanted to make sure going in that we're clear on that. Is that right, Stacy?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right. So I wanted to bring tonight just to continue our conversation and our update as we've been working towards the goal of the fall of reopening in schools. And really, as we've worked daily on monitoring and adhering to what the guidelines are in place, and as everybody knows, things seem to change very frequently, although oftentimes not as quickly as we'd like them to. But it has been an ongoing process. And so between our last board meeting of June 4th and tonight, we have continued to meet with our stakeholders. We've continued to look at our processes. How can we open in the fall? And I think just reminding of two things. The one is that the safety and health of our students and staff has continued to be the number one comment issue that comes forward that we want to continue to address. And the other is that recognizing that we are now into our summer break and really are trying to have a plan in place for the fall. And I believe everyone's desire is we want kids to be back in school. We want to see our children. We want to see them in that classroom. And that really is what we're focusing on as we move through our plans. But we want to tie those two together and get our kids back to school, but we want it to be a safe and healthy environment as well. So tonight I wanted to really kind of focus our attention on a really direct purpose based on where we are. I want to review the four phases that introduced at the June 4th with the framework for reopening school. I just want to verify that that is the direction the board is okay with, that is the plan that we want to move forward with. But with that, I want to have a clear understanding of what are the constraints that we're dealing with as CUSD based on what the guidelines are out there, based on the ever-changing health environment, and based on the complete unknowns that we don't know that are going to be in place in the fall. And then really, what is our communication after tonight? I know that we have staff members, we have our community that is anxious to know what exactly are we doing in the fall. And so really do want to have some sense of a direction of what we're going to communicate out to everyone after tonight's meeting. And I know that as we've continued to move through this process and we've referred to the guidelines and adherence with the CDC and the public health, really did want to share with you what we are using as our guide right now really is the Stronger Together checklist. This has come out from California Department of Ed. It's reinforced by public health departments, and it actually outlines there are over 200 items on this list that you need to go through as you're reviewing getting ready to open up schools. And so we have spent our time going through this list to really assess where we are as a district and where we are hoping to move to. So we went through this entire checklist of over 200, and we tried to color code where we feel we are as a district and use 3 senses of color codes. A green means we have that in place. We know that we've got it covered. It's already happening. Then we went on to what we identified as our yellow areas. And these yellow areas are areas that we are in progress of putting in place, or they could be ones that we just know are going to be ongoing and we need to continue to monitor. Then we went through and identified the red areas, and the red areas really are those areas that we do not have in place right now. They're not in progress. They are some of those big constraints. And so I think it's really important that we remember as this checklist, our goal on this checklist is really to move all of these items from red to yellow or to green. And that can happen 2 combinations of ways. One, the reds could be put into place from the district side, that we're able to accommodate those and move those reds to green or to yellow. Or the other side could be that the restrictions become less intrusive and that those are reduced. And so automatically those guidelines are shifted into the yellows and to the greens. So keeping that in mind, just a review of the four phases framework is really, we introduced that as trying to have that model that allows us to go from the most restrictive environment all the way to the non-restrictive environment, and then what happens in between those as well. So just as an overview, that phase 1 is really our most restrictive. This is where our schools are remaining closed. We're in the full distance learning. We aren't allowing campus visitors on our sites. All of our essential work is performed usually on reduced days or hours, so we limit the exposure of our staff for long periods of time. We require the cloth face coverings for all the employees who are coming onto the campuses or performing any of the essential duties. We enforce that 6-foot social distancing, and we would continue to provide the meals for our students throughout the week. From there, we would look at a phase 2, which we consider our—
Stacy, can you give a second? We were on the wrong slide there, and I want to make sure we're, yeah, the wrong slide deck, but this is the right one. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I
Sorry.
have in my view here, so.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
We're on phase 2. Jeff, if you can move it up. There we go. So phase 2 would be that moderate restrictive, where for the majority of our students, they would continue in the distance learning. We would begin to identify small groups that could come onto the campus to receive instruction. And this really would be identifying groups that we consider vulnerable. It could be students who have not been able to access the distance learning. It could be for some of the elective non-academic areas. It could be for students that are receiving different services. It really would allow us to start introducing those small groups onto the site and ensuring that health and safety. We would continue with our classified employees, for the most part, performing duties remotely if at all possible, but again, continuing monitor the number of days and hours that we do have the mix of staff on our sites. We would allow teachers to return to their classrooms to provide the instruction. We would actually look at doing this just to acclimate them back onto that whole school setting. I think it's important to remember that our sites have been closed since March, and we really do need to allow our staff the opportunity to come back in and feel safe, reunite with their environment, ensure they're aware of all the procedures to put the 6 feet distancing in place. So we would allow teachers to come back in and work through that environment. And of course, during phase 2, we'd continue to look at monitoring where we are in adherence to this guidelines that are issued out to us. Phase 3 would be our least restrictive. And this is a hybrid model where we would have students doing a portion of their learning distance learning and a portion in a classroom environment. We have looked at many different scenarios as we work through these hybrids, and there are a lot of those constraints that are still in place for us to bring the hybrid model back in. The reduced number of students allowed on campus, ensuring the 6-foot distancing, ensuring the cloth mask. Those are all those reds and yellows that we will continue to work through to get to this phase 3. Again, just a repeat of the face coverings, the social distancing. The other piece that we would look at throughout these entire models or phases would be to allow a full distance learning module to continue throughout the school year. So if we do have families that identify that they would choose to stay in the distance learning, we'll actually have that module available for them as well. The last phase would be our phase 4, our non-restrictive phase. And really this is the chance to return to school as normal, or whatever we remember as normal as being through all of these times. But it really is getting all of our students back onto the campus, getting our staffs back on together. So with those 4 phases and looking at where we are, we know that everything continues to be adjusted, but really want to have our focus on where we feel we are right now, knowing that we still have a lot of reds on that checklist, is determining, one, is the 4-phase framework still what we want to work towards? Determine, are we ready to make that commitment that August 13th, we're going to start into full distance learning? We recognize again that some new things are probably going to come out from the state in the month of July, but are they going to be enough to deter and have us ready to go by August 13th? And I think as staff, we feel fairly strong that we will not be ready to. We would, our choice would be to look at the full distance learning. It does allow us then to focus our effort and all of our priority over our summer months to really ensure that our distance learning module is that quality education that we so value and we expect. And then if we are, what do we want to communicate out to our staff and families? We know that everybody is waiting so that they too can plan for the fall. So I'm going to pause there and open up for questions and discussion.
Can I make one clarification? I just want everyone to remember, and especially our community, that when we're talking about phases, it's not really lockstep, this and this and this. It's as it becomes available to be able to move to another phase. But remember, we always might have to go back at any moment in time. We may have to say, you know what, there's an outbreak. The restrictions get even more stringent, and you might have to go back to distance learning and then move forward. So it could easily be that way. And I just want people to be clear that part of this plan is to be ready for that potential, including making our distance learning model even stronger, so that if in case we have to go back to it, we're doing a quality job of it.
All right, Satish, I see you with a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Tracy. And I have a couple of small questions here. One is when is the phase 2 you're proposing? Like, I know that we are in the phase 1 right now, and a lot of yellows are there and some reds, right? And very less green, right? So are we having something in our mind that when is phase 2 going to be? Some point of time we have to introduce phase 2, right? So that's where the stepping stone, I guess, because phase 1 where we are now, and it can continue as it is. But probably starting phase 2 is the biggest challenge, I guess. Like, once you are in phase 2, we can move towards right, like when we are comfortable, right? But the first getting into that mode, a smaller group or whatever, the selective group or whatever you call that, but that phase 2 is going to be a big challenge. And what point we think that we are comfortable in starting phase 2?
So much of that will depend on those guidelines and where we are with that. But because phase 2 allows us to identify those really small groups, we could possibly, if things continue in a positive path with the restrictions and the guidelines, we could open up with the full distance learning and within a couple weeks already be moving into a phase 2 and start introducing students in. So it really is determining on can we continue to address those red lines on the guideline and start moving those more to the yellows and the greens and ensure that safe environment. So there is that ability that we could move phase 2 fairly quickly.
And what's the percentage of participation you are looking there, like to phase 2? Like, it's a small group, you keep saying. Small. How small is small, or how big is small?
That would depend on what we're ready to bring back onto the campus. So we would identify what groups we feel are the most vulnerable that could be accommodated onto campus. Right now we are under the restriction of 12 or under on a campus, the 6-foot social distancing. So we would still be contained under those type of guidelines.
Yeah, we're kind of planning with the assumption that today's restrictions will be there. So 12 in what is the size of our classroom so that you can have the 6-foot distance, et cetera. So that's kind of our benchmark right now for saying whether we're open or not. And I do want to say I've been trying to step back and completely allow Stacy and Allison to lead this effort. And I just want to say they're doing an amazing, amazing job. And I tend to say, come on, we can do it. Can't we go faster, kind of thing. But I think they are being properly careful and just saying, we don't want to set an expectation that somehow by August 13, we're going to be ready to open with a hybrid model, which is the 13th being the first day of school. It's just more and more clear, especially with this 100 and who knows what point checklist that we have to be able to hit, that we would have no red areas still by August 13, which for us is around the corner. So just know that there is a concern about that, and there's still a sense that certainly by the end of September, early October, feel more confident about, but it'll be somewhere in there. And just know that that's I think that's the general sense right now. So I did want to just put that on the table so that we're being clear about what time frame are we talking about. It could be earlier than that, but August 13 seems highly unlikely. And I think we feel pretty hopeful about October 1, something like that, just so you have a general sense, but know that we don't know until we learn new stuff. So we can't say, here's an exact time.
Okay.
Phyllis, go ahead. You're muted.
You're still muted, Phyllis.
You're still muted.
Am I good?
Now you're good.
There you go.
Okay. All right. I fully support this 4-phase approach, and I thank you, Stacy and Allison, for the thought that went into it. I'm all about consistency. So I'm concerned both with the direct learning piece and, both with the distance learning piece in phase 1 and with the moderate restrictive in phase 2, that we make sure that there's consistency across the schools in the kind of instruction the kids are receiving. And I'm also wondering about the second bullet in phase 2, identifying small groups. Can we legally do that? Are we exposing ourselves if we pick and choose kids?
I think we would need to be very careful on that, but we do want to provide services, and we could use some of the students may not be equitably receiving services right now because of the challenges with distance learning, and so we do need to really explore that, and that again is another reason why we need more time before we jump right into phase 2 as we start to introduce students into the environment.
So
I would say, Phyllis, I would say there are far more potential legal and other kind of issues by not meeting the needs of our most vulnerable students, meeting their IEPs, et cetera, right? I mean, if you don't do that, I actually think there will be far more issue, let alone just the ethical, moral obligation we have to work with students who are.
I just want to make sure that we're operating within the law.
Yeah, well, I believe we are. And like I say, I actually think it's more dangerous not to assume that, because there are protections for certain sets of students, and I think we have to pay attention to it. I'm not being cavalier and just say, oh no, it's way better. I'm just saying that that's the dilemma we're in. But I actually believe the state will make it clear that we need to be doing more work with those groups of students that require and should get additional work.
And the last thing I have is, again, back to consistency. As we move into bringing kids back, I think there has to be consistency about that. Maybe not every school, because if you're going to start with special ed, I understand we don't have special ed programs in every school, but I just want to make sure that there's some consistency across the district about what we're providing for kids. Thank you, Lori.
Now it's me who wasn't muted or unmuted. I see Sylvia. Why don't you go ahead?
I had a couple clarifying questions before I had comments. So, Stacy, this checklist of 200 things from the state is like so massive, and so thank you, kudos to your whole team for even going through each one and measuring where we are. I had a question about the reds. So in terms of us not having those particular items, or not, being able to say that we're like in progress or have it, is it, and they're kind of all over the board in terms of categories, but just if you could give me a little bit more information about it, is it primarily a budget thing that, like, for example, needing the PPE and needing to purchase it and not having the budget to have it, or is it like that we don't have processes in place that we need to just create those processes? Like, just overall, could you give me a snapshot of what exactly it means to move to categorize it as a red versus moving it to a yellow, and how far away are we from moving those reds to yellows?
Yeah, and so it's really difficult. I think each of the 22 items are different. Some of them do have to do with budget. Some of those do have to do with the campus setup. Some of those have to do with staffing. So each one we really are going to have to look at independently. Some of those we think that we will get to, we know that we'll get to, we just aren't able to at this point between the short time frame of now and August. So it really depends, because some of it is the PPE equipment, some of it is just that campus environment. The other is supplies, the distancing. So each one is a little bit unique. And again, it will probably be a combination of the two to move out of the red. Some we will be able to move out of, and some will be moved out of because restrictions will be lessened by the guidelines we're imagining.
I see. Okay, so thanks for the reminder, the clarification that it's about the August 13th start date that is kind of the measurement against, right? Like that, it's not that we wouldn't get there, it's that we only have 10 weeks or so to get there, right?
Right.
My other clarification question had to do with one of the phases had the teachers coming back into the classroom, which I'm very excited about. And I think it was in phase 2. I can't, if you can scroll back to that.
Yeah, I think that's
In
right.
phase 2, it's called out, but we're actually looking at even under phase 1, allowing teachers, as long as that they're able to social distance, they wear their face covering, we monitor how many are on campus. We would actually look at bringing teachers back during phase 1 and allowing them back into that work environment.
Wonderful. Okay, that was going to be my question, is how much flexibility do we have to even allow them back in phase 1? I know our teachers are using their home printers and using their own Wi-Fi, and just to be able to even do videos or things in the classroom, so they have the whiteboard behind them, they have the tools and the resources. So that's good to hear. So I have some, I guess, I don't want to move into discussion yet because I know you've got comments and stuff.
Yeah, we've got a lot of public comments. So yeah, so let's wrap on clarifying question, around to clarifying questions first. Anybody else on that? Jerry?
Yes, thank you, Lori. First of all, around the these 200 or so items, can you talk a bit about, let's see, how do the status of those items map to the triggers for the phases? So for instance, Stacy, would you think that we need to get all the red items to yellow to go from 1 to 2? Because yellow just means it's ongoing. We haven't really resolved it. So I wanted to kind of understand right now your thinking around, we have this palette of colors. How does that map to the triggers? And maybe the specific one is going from 1 to 2. What would it take to go from 1 to 2 right now in your mind?
So very few of the red would need to change for us to get into phase 2, actually, because it would be that small group. That's why our feeling is that we probably would be able to get to phase 2 fairly quickly. But if you look at the majority of those reds, they do need to change into a green or a yellow in some form or another before we even move into that phase 3. And some of those boil down to the alternate schedules for students. When we look at our 4th and 5th graders in our middle schools, how do we bring half of the population of students back onto the campus and ensure that they're social distancing, ensure that they're wearing their masks, ensure that they're not commingling their groups right now, that they are staying into these groups of 12, that we're not bringing outside adults in. So those are really that challenges where, I think part of that expectation is, if our guidelines are lessened as we move forward, then that eases that restriction, and suddenly we're allowed to have more students on the campus, that we don't have to have all these features in place. Then we can move into phase 3. But our goal would really be whatever is considered red needs to move into a yellow or green before we're fully bringing everyone back.
Okay, great. Okay, and then my thanks. My second question is around these phases. So I think in the aggregate, I'm certainly supportive. It's a very logical framework. But I feel like there's a set of orthogonal policies that are, just policies that are orthogonal to these phases. So for instance, I actually hear a lot about sort of right now in the distance learning, we have the inconsistency of certain classes. They meet every day, and some of them they meet once a week. And so that's not really addressed in this phase model. And so do you see having any sort of policies or guidelines, both for consistency, as Phyllis talked about, but also having some, say, minimum level, at least 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week kind of thing? Because I think that's the biggest thing I'm hearing from parents. And with my own 2 children, I'm seeing a wide range. Some classes, they meet once a week, an hour, and that's it. Some of these other ones, boy, they're teachers scheduling extra social activity just so they can. And so I really see a huge range. And so is the district thinking that we might provide some guidelines or requirements to sort of, narrow that range, or is it sort of still going to be the same where whatever goes? Interesting your thoughts here.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we've been working on over these last couple of weeks, and we're going to continue our summer work. Allison's doing an amazing job and has a large group of teachers that are going to continue to work through the summer. Through our advisory team and all of our stakeholder groups, we have been continue to collect the data and look at that information and forming some consistent schedules across the board for elementary and middle school. And so that was really one of our incentives to try to add that July 9th board meeting. So based on tonight, if we know that, the direction is, yes, we're going to open with distance learning, we really do want our energy to be used on preparing for that distance learning, developing those schedules, being able to communicate that, and really ensuring that there's that robust quality education under distance learning. So we're excited about that. And the progress is coming along. At the end of the day, teachers want to see their kids. They share that with us over and over. We just want to see our students.
Right. And then so implicit in your presentation here, I just want to make this explicit. It sounds like what I'm getting from the staff report is that given the amount of work we have to do, it's pretty much going to be distance learning, even though I know it's item number 2, whether to not to commit to start school, but sounds like that is the recommendation at this point, given the data you presented. It's very unlikely we can flip a lot of those reds to green in time on August 13th. Just want to make that explicit. I'm kind of getting that, but that is the case, Stacy?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, if something miraculous were to happen in July, comes back and we have all of ours shifted to yellow to green, first we'd celebrate, and then 2, we'd look at how quickly could we get to that phase 2.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. I'm finished.
All right. Anybody else, or is it my turn? I don't remember now. Sorry,
it's your turn now, Lori.
It's my turn now. Yay. Okay. So, Stacy, can you? So first, I want to start off by saying going to this level of detail has been incredibly helpful, and I think it's been fascinating to me as I've talked to board presidents all throughout the county and actually in some other counties, how few districts are digging in at this level. I mean, I've talked to board presidents where they're talking about a hybrid model from the beginning of the year. And I say, so how is it that you're meeting all of these requirements? And they're like, what requirements are you talking about? So I do want to applaud the fact that this is where we're starting from. And, you know, like my colleagues, I think I have some questions around some of them, it seems to me, we are sort of beholden on waiting to see what changes with the guidance, right? We know we're going to be getting some more guidance from the county. We know we're going to be getting some more guidance from the state in mid-July. And so some of those things, you know, we know we're waiting on that, and that may impact whether or not, I guess, whether or not we move forward on, let's take a category like PPE, right? We know guidance may change on that. We also know there's a cost associated with procuring that and a timeline associated with procuring that. And while, let's say, procuring it now may help us move from red to yellow and yellow to green quicker, there's also the fact that if it changes on us and we have something we don't need, or we have something that's not the right thing we need for whatever the guidance changes, how are we working through some of those logistics?
Yeah, so I know Jeff works closely with the county and the CBOs as far as where we're getting some of our PPE equipment from. That really is that unknown as we're listening to what the state is addressing with the PPE. We've just heard today that now face coverings are required for everyone that is outdoors. You know, so as we think that we're getting less restrictive, now we're hearing it's reverting back to a restrictive environment. And so, you know, it really is just monitoring every day what that expectation is coming out and how do we secure the right equipment for it. You know, the other talk that's out there is, are we going to require the thermal checks, or is that going to come in and become a symptoms check, which is, you know, a completely different category. And so again, until we can really put those pieces in place, you know, it's not about money necessarily, although we are in a budget situation. It's about the safety and health of our students. But there does need to be that consideration as we are looking at what is the cost to the district to put some of these pieces in place.
And so, like, for example, like I think we heard that there's a potential for the state to take some action on providing some initial supplies, but they're putting a timeline on how long those supplies would be made available. And then we're supposed to have our own source and be responsible for it, you know, without the funds. Do we anticipate that that items that turn green, is there a potential they would go back to red as we're moving, to Craig's point, as we're flexing in and out of these phases? I have to think that potential is there too, right?
I think that is always that possibility. You know, we don't know what those unknowns are. Could we all have, you know, this resurgence of the virus coming back in the fall, and what happens there? So, you know, that goes back to that unknown. We wish we knew the answers. You know, as far as your question as the equipment that we have, we understand that we are getting either a 60 or a 90-day supply. You know, what happens after that and where we are, you know, I think that's continued to be monitored.
Okay, and then as we're talking about the phases, and my colleagues already hit on my questions about consistency, so thank you for that. In phase one, where we're really talking complete distance learning, is there, if the guidelines from the county and the state, the health guidelines, right? Because we're all of this is prefaced by the fact that health and safety and delivering the highest quality education we can that's like, I don't want to say it goes without saying, but it literally goes without saying here those are our number one priorities. But if we're in phase one and we're in this mode where we're 100% distance learning, is there any foreseeable chance that there is some room there for like a 95-5 model where, we're saying we're 100% distance learning for all the academics, but maybe we could offer some sort of community building or social emotional activity for one class at a time out on a field to let kids come together socially distanced just to see faces and teachers. And is there any chance that if we find ourselves in phase one, whether or not it's for the first 1 or 2 weeks, or whether or not there are other implications there that we're able to do anything at all in person in phase one?
Yeah. I think that's really that fluidity between phase one and phase two. We use the term small groups under phase two, but it really is just that ability to start introducing students back onto groups, whether it's an outdoor group or the small academic group. So I think under phase two, I really do see phase one and phase two probably working very closely together. And we can we can call it phase 1.5.
Right, but specific to your question around what about social emotional, what about other kinds of things can we be doing? I just want to say to everybody that Allison and Stacy and that committee and others have been working on schedules, what it looks like, what will it look like in phase one and phase two. And we decided tonight wasn't the right time to bring it, because we felt like we're going to go down a rabbit hole around, I think it should be this, or it should go there. So just to be transparent, that's why we're having the meeting on the 9th. We're going to share some very specific schedules of what it might look like in middle school at different grades. And one of the things I've really pushed on is, well, if we are going to do a hybrid model, what is the best thing to do when in school versus at home? And let's not just say, yeah, we're, what are we doing there? So these are all conversations you'll have to have. It's just tonight's not the right night for it. And so we need just a little bit more time to pull that stuff together, because right now we really wanted you to focus on these 3 things, knowing that we're bringing you that on the 9th. Some more detail around schedule options, and that'll get to the consistency and the rigor and all those things that I think are on people's mind.
And then the one other question I had, sort of big picture in terms of, is there a point at which something can come back around, and it may be July, when we get more indication from the state or from the county, but I think there's a lot of concerns being expressed by CSBA, by board members all over the county that I've been talking to, that there are a lot of concerns around liability. What, if anything, do we think we're going to have to, what are we going to be left to deal with on our own as far as liability goes, versus is there any chance, is there any indication that there are some conversations going on that we may get some relief or guidance around liability as far as bringing kids back versus continuing in distance learning?
We can bring some of that back on that July 9th board meeting as further conversations are taking place.
Okay. All right, so does anybody else have any other clarifying questions on the presentation before I take public comment? Okay, go ahead, Satish.
Yeah, so what are the options actually parents get in this case? Like, is it like either they can opt for only distance learning, or do they have a say that I want to be part of phase 2, or do they have a say that I want to be phase 3, something like that?
So during phase 1, all students would be in distance learning. When we say we're offering an additional strand, we recognize that there are going to be some families that are going to choose not to want to return their child, whether it's a phase 2, phase 3, or phase 4. So we really do want to, and it would be a separate strand completely. You're going to be in a distance learning for the entire year. We're still really planning that out. There's difficulties with that scheduling as well that we're trying to work through, but a family could opt to stay in that distance learning for the entire year. in regards to the transition from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, if we're bringing students back in phase 3 in these small groups, that would be their class placement. So, our intention was to reassure families before we move into that phase, the health and safety is in place. So we really would want to address what their concerns are and why they're not comfortable bringing their student back and whether they need to go into that year-long distance learning strand.
Stacy, would it be fair to say, just to hedge our bets on that a little bit and say that until we work through what it looks like for some set of people to do distance learning all year, when you're in phase 2 or phase 3, et cetera, because what I've heard in general from you and from Allison is that there's some real logistical issues around having a different set of people. Who are the teachers that do that, and does it work out in right numbers? And I mean, the detail around that is tremendous. So just to not to paint yourself into a corner on that one, I think we have to leave open the notion that, like certainly for me, I always like the idea of giving some options to people, that we don't all have to do the same thing, but just know that it could be really, really complicated in this case to have the instructional rigor and everything that we want to have by allowing everybody just to choose whatever they want to do. And so I don't want to overstate that. Just to be transparent about that.
All right. Any other clarifying questions? Sylvia, go ahead.
Sorry, it's not a clarifying question, but as I'm listening to Stacy talk about like what you're bringing back July 9th, I was thinking about the difference between what we've been doing this past semester and what we'll be doing in the fall. A huge part of the effectiveness of that has to do with the fact that the teachers already knew their students. And then in the fall, it'll be brand new classes, it'll be unfamiliar faces. And so I'm wondering as you bring back some ideas and thoughts for that, if we can have some, I don't know what level of creativity we can have in terms of allowing teachers to meet their new students, and I don't know like how that would work, like, bringing them on to do individual assessments or whatever. But just something like that to keep in mind, because, and I know you guys are already thinking of these things, but really realizing that the difference of a teacher in the classroom at the beginning of the year and a teacher in a classroom in March or at the end of the year is huge. So putting in some framework for that.
Absolutely, and that was, our teachers have shared that with us in numerous meetings, is just that concern, how do they get to know their students at the beginning of the year? So we are looking at creative ways of, using those first couple days or weeks or whatever it takes to acclimate the students into their new teacher environment.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other clarifying questions? I'm gonna go ahead and shift into public comment, and then we can come back and wrap on anything anybody else wants to discuss after that. Sound good? All right, so last I saw from Leslie, I think we have 12 people. So
we have 14 at this point.
I'm sorry?
We have 14 at this point.
Okay, let's see, 14, so that's gonna put us, I guess I would be inclined to maybe say 2 minutes apiece, but I'm open to hearing from my fellow board members. Do you want me to leave it at 3 minutes? I know this is a really important topic, so.
I think that we can do 3 minutes with that number in less than an hour, so I would opt for 3 minutes.
Okay, everybody thumbs up for that? All right, so Leslie, can you give me the first 3 names, please?
Absolutely. The first one is Ellen Suzu, Inat Schreiber, followed by Noah Matzleich.
Okay, so Ellen Suzu, you are up.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Ellen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ellen Suzwa. First, I'd like to thank Lori Cunningham for taking the time to reply to my email about how to attend these virtual meetings. It's been several years since I last attended one of these meetings, and the circumstances then were very different. Secondly, I'll get to the point. I have a daughter who recently finished 7th grade at Cupertino Middle School, and she'll be entering 8th grade this fall. I understand that the district has to plan for the different methods of instruction depending on whether the schools are in phase 1, 2, or so on. I guess my ask is that the district have a plan ready this fall for effective distance learning. I want my daughter to receive the same number of hours of instruction in phases 1 through 4 that she had received before the pandemic. I want the instruction to be given in real time by the teachers, and I want my daughter to receive real grades. None of this happened when the school went to remote learning in mid-March, and I don't think my daughter really learned much at all. Well, this was completely understandable given the circumstances and the fact that this was unexpected and an emergency. Now there is some time to plan and learn from the distance learning experiences of others, such as the Russian School of Math, which after early hiccups resumed real-time instruction for the same number of hours as before the pandemic. I want the district to have a plan for phase 3 and the ability to move to phase 3 as fast as possible. My daughter's at the age where she needs to socialize with other kids and with teachers and with staff. She needs routine, and she needs the responsibility of getting ready in the morning. She bikes the 3 miles to school, and it's her responsibility to get there on time, and she needs that kind of routine. To summarize, I want an effective distance learning plan ready to go when school starts that resumes real-time instruction for the same number of hours as before the pandemic. And by the time school starts, I would like a plan ready for phase 3 that can be triggered as soon as safety permits. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ellen. Anat Schreiber, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
We can, Anat. Thank you. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing us to participate in this process. As a native Israeli, I was born and raised in Israel. We unfortunately did not witness such a thorough and democratic process of involving parents in those matters. So I'm pretty excited to be involved. So I'm representing my family here. I have 2 boys in the Cupertino School District. One of them is going to attend 4th grade next year, and my youngest one is going to TK next year in Stockholm. My question is specifically about my youngest son and about all of the kids that are going to attend TK and K next year. I acknowledge the fact that kids that are that young will find it hard to participate in distant learning, and I would like to ask for your perspective of how you can involve or how you can build a program that will be more fitting for those age groups. Considering the fact this is going to be the first time for those kids where they encounter a school environment. So that's basically my ask from you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anat. All right, and then Noah Matzlich.
And Noah, if you could raise your hand. Noah? Okay, I'm going to read for Noah.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I understand the district is still building and contemplating on how to start the school year of 2020-2021, if a full distance learning mode or hybrid, etc. I wanted to suggest opening school for the younger children ages 5 through 8, TK to 2nd grade, on a full class face-to-face instruction by dividing the classes into 2 capsules of up to 12 students and allowing them to utilize the entire school classes, including the upper grades. Since these kids are young, distance learning is harder for them than older kids. This method was tried and successful in Israel for the first few months of coming back to preschools for the first time after the pandemic broke. Thank you.
All right, and our next three?
The next three are Elizabeth Bells, Niti, followed by Ido Lustig. So Elizabeth, if you could raise your hand.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, please, go ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Time. I understand other parents have similar questions that I do. My question was that I would like the board to address if we open school with full distance learning, how are we to accommodate parents who cannot work from home? And I appreciate that essential workers did receive childcare with shelter in place. But as we are opening, this is not necessarily going to be available for all parents. In addition, my daughter is a second grade student with an IEP, and distance learning was not entirely successful for her given her age and her learning abilities. And I would like the board to address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, we have Niti.
Niti, if you could raise your hand. Okay, I think I will read for Niti. Good evening, everyone. I am a parent of a rising 6th grader and 2nd grader. I could not complete the survey that was sent out. As a parent of a child who has an IEP and with both parents working full-time, distance learning has been extremely challenging despite the best efforts by teachers. My child without an IEP was able to progress, but the child on an IEP was struggling to keep up with the work and work independently. I am very concerned that if an on-site instruction does not return in the fall or better supports for these students are not put in place, my child's education will greatly suffer due to his disability. I hope you keep the learning needs of this student group in mind as you decide the final plan for reopening.
Thank you, Niti, for that. And then I think our last one in this grouping is Ido Lustig.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for letting me and allow me to talk and share my thoughts. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the board members for coming up with such a detailed plan. And also to add that I fully agree with everyone from the parents that spoke before me. I am speaking on behalf of our family, father of 2 kids, one in 3rd grade and the other one in kindergarten, and on behalf of some other families that we've been in touch recently. What I would like to ask the board members to consider is how we can move as quickly as possible forward with the plan, given that many private schools and day camps and other organizations are already having educational activities and are going to have educational activities starting mid-August in groups of 12 or less on-site. I am very much worried by the lack of equality this brings to us, parents who are sending their kids to public schools, which I believe should be the case for all parents, to be sending their kids to public schools. And we would very much like the distinguished board members to consider not just the physical health, but the mental and emotional health of our children. It is very, very hard for me to imagine how my daughter would start kindergarten something she is expecting to very much without seeing her teacher, seeing her friends, and to our experience with distance learning, which has been quite below the expected bar. And I agree with Ellen, who said that we do expect distance learning, if that is to happen, to be at the length of a normal learning day. I just cannot imagine how my daughter could go through that. And we would like you to very seriously consider how we can move forward as soon as possible to phase 3 and then hopefully phase 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ido. Craig, sorry, excuse me, Leslie, our next 3 names, please.
Maitel Glom Volk, Liat Zisman, followed by Dan Barak.
Okay, and all 3, if you could go ahead and just raise your hands to make it easy for staff to find you, that would be great. And as I'm calling for Maitel Glom, and I'm sorry I missed the 3rd name on that one, I just want to remind everybody that we are happy to hear your input, and as we discussed in the beginning of the meeting, that the board doesn't respond to public comment, but we certainly take questions and comments under advisement, and thank you all for your contributions to things you'd like us and staff to be thinking through. So with that, Maitel Glom.
So Maitel, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Hello?
Hi,
Can you hear
Maitel.
me?
We can, thank you.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity and good evening. So I've been listening to this really fascinating discussion that you have been having, and I have been really wanting to emphasize some points that some already have been mentioned. First of all, my kid has been has been at home for the past 3 months, as all the students been, and I have to say the effect that it has on her has been, how should I describe it? Not good. The kids really need to play with friends. In the past few days, she started attending camp, and the effect has been amazing. Just starting to see kids again, even with all the guidelines, it is amazing. And I wanted to ask you to consider letting kids attend school at small groups under 12 with, again, keeping all the guidelines whenever possible, small capsules as an option, maybe small shifts, dividing every classroom into 2 shifts, that's also an option. I don't know, I'm thinking creatively, trying to find solutions that maybe can help getting kids back to school, and again, keeping them and the staff, of course, as safe as possible. That's it. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Maitel. And next up, we have Liat Zeisman.
Hi, do you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I'm a Stockholm parent, and I really want to say thank you to all Stockholm staff. My kids had a very good as it get experience in the these last months, but still I have another kid that's gonna attend a K next year, and I'm very worried about how it's gonna work for him. And I agree strongly with Ido that I want to ask you again to consider to do the small groups and to help the little kids to get to know school. It's a very big change for them to come from the preschools and to come to Stockholm, the fantastic biggest school that we have in the area. It's a very big change. And I think that for 5 years old, it's not possible to learn from home. So please consider and try to see what can you do and how can you make small groups, and let's take care of the emotional situation, because the kids can't stay at home. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Liat. And then Jan Barak.
It is Dan Barak.
Thank you, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us, Dan.
I can't hear you right now, but I'll just speak very quickly. My name is Dan. I'm a Stockholm-Meyer parent to 2 kids. And as you might have noticed by the unnatural number of Israeli accents in this meeting, there's a growing number of families that are trying to figure out, on top of course, supporting and plus oneing everyone that said that we should move back to school as quickly as possible. We also realize that, there is a high likelihood that there'll be some distant learning, and we're trying to figure out what we as parents can do to help the kids have the best academic year as possible and achieve some of the goals that were discussed before, both from a social as well as an academic perspective. And we realize that these are normal times, and we as parents will probably need to contribute a lot more of our time than usual and take time away from work. One idea that came up that we really want to promote is the idea of doing small group homeschooling to support the distance learning. The idea is to have a small group of students meeting regularly, maybe once or twice a week. Supported by a parent that will help them, just have a good time in a social setting, but also work through the curriculum. Supporting such an initiative will require the curriculum to have some features. A lot of people talked about consistency. That's a prerequisite for such an idea. And so we are looking to work with the team that is planning next year and in promoting this idea and making sure that the curriculum and the way that the plan is set up supports such initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And let's see, I think, Leslie, we have 4 more, it sounds like. Do you want to read all 4 names for me?
Absolutely. The first one is Maya Elder Kadar. It's spelled M-A-I-A, Lori.
Yep.
The second one is Christine Leung, followed by Paige Usher, followed by Sonia, and I think it's Sonia Patel.
Okay. So Maya Elder, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having us, and thank you for all your work. I'll start off with saying that right now our 4th child is in the district. We have 3 that graduated from the district. Some of them are still in high school, just down the street. And we have an uprising 2nd grader at West Valley Elementary. I myself am a teacher. I teach in the private sector in Palo Alto. And sadly, I've seen the grave and huge differences between what can be done and what was done, and what is being done. And but saying all that, I'll say that our teachers are amazing. Our teachers at West Valley went above and beyond when it came to social and emotional story time and everything that they could do with the means that they had. But by far, that wasn't enough. That's not called online learning. Giving a 1st grader, online math, that's not teaching math. Giving a 1st grader to do science experiments alone in the kitchen, that is definitely not teaching science. I taught online. I know what it takes to teach online. It is hard. It is a whole different ballpark. I taught hours every day, and then I had staff meetings, and then I had to check work, and I did it. And then I would watch my kids not getting what I was giving to somebody, even though my taxes are so high. And even though I pay so much for being in an area with great schools, we have great families, we have great teachers, and we're not getting what we need. I want my kid back in school. I want her with her friends. I want her with her teachers. If it could be, I'd want her with her teachers from last year. I don't want her meeting somebody new with the classroom she had last year. Start thinking outside the box. This is Silicon Valley. We are so creative here. We have the best families. We have the best school district, and it's just not showing. I am going back to work in August with a cohort of 12 students. That can be done. We thought outside the box at West Valley, and we had mobile classrooms when needed. There are so many things you could do, and we, the parents, would help you do it. We would come and we would give ideas. But how are we going to go back to work if our kids are at home? I don't think it's legal to leave a 7-year-old alone at home to try and fend for herself. So what I'm thinking is that we can do better if it's for online learning and definitely for back to school. I can't even believe we're still discussing only phase 1. And I'm sorry I sound so upset, but I have put so much work into my own work. I know things can be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maya. Christine Leung. And Leslie, I think I saw that she left the meeting.
I believe that's true. So I will read for her.
Okay.
Distance learning. Teachers accessing their classrooms will be huge. I feel like classroom for teacher is the equivalent of a lab for a scientist. Distance learning must include live instruction, maybe teachers broadcasting from their classrooms. Are there cost estimates of each model? Is there any consideration for reopening schools and doing weekly COVID testing of students and staff? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Paige Usher.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can, Paige. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm a Montclair parent. I have a daughter who will start first grade, so she is 6.5, and I have my son coming into kindergarten, so he is 5.5. And distance learning for me was not very successful. I think that you know, as much as I love Montclair, I love all the teachers, the principal's amazing. I just don't agree with the amount of screen time that was given to the kids. I mean, that's, to me, something that we've been taught to avoid as parents for a very long time. And, you know, I agree, I believe with what Maya said, that, you know, it's just, we need to think outside of the box. We have to be a little bit more age appropriate. What works for an 8th grader is not what works for a kindergartner. I think that we're creating a divide emotionally and socially within our communities, because some parents are going to do homeschooling, get tutors and, you know, extra childcare, and that's just not an option for everybody. I think that, you know, I don't think we got to see very well your checklist of the Better Together requirements with the red and orange and green. I want to have a better understanding of what that is, and if there's anything that parents and community members can do to help come together and get these kids back into the classrooms, because clearly I think what everybody has said tonight is what every one of us parents are thinking and feeling. We've got to find a way to get our kids back in school. And I honestly cannot believe that one of these top like Board of Education, Silicon Valley school districts is talking about going back to school at distance learning. It's unbelievable to me. So I just wanted to know if there's anything that we can do to help and get these schools going, just as parents, and I have volunteer time, and what do we need to do, and where's the list? We want to see a list. So thank you.
Thank you, Paige. And Leslie, still the last one here?
The last one is Sonia Patel.
Okay, and we haven't had any new ones come in?
I'll double check one more time. Oh, I do have one more. So it will be Sonia followed by Betsy.
Okay, so Sonia Patel, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all your hard work. I have a incoming 7th grader who at Miller, and he really enjoyed his year before the shelter in place. I wanted to kind of echo what Maya and others have said in terms of the importance of in-person learning as far as emotional, social, and physical health go. PE, PE in person is really important. Meeting their friends. I think mental health is going to become a huge issue if we don't have in-person schools pretty soon. I would like to offer help as other parents have. Anything that we can do, maybe we can, if we need to donate time or if we need to donate money, I'm sure that parents would be willing to do that. I mean, for PPE or whatever other issues that we need to move from the red areas to the green areas to the yellow areas. I would like to see school open up as quickly as possible in person for the kids. I think the mental health crisis is really something that needs to be addressed with the kids being isolated at home with no social interaction. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And then I think, Leslie, you said Betsy?
Betsy, yes.
Great.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to be in the vast minority here. I'm glad we're holding off on opening the schools. I'm very appreciative that the district wants to keep our students and staff safe and healthy. We all know that the numbers are still slowly going up on this virus, and we need to be aware of that. I also note there are many groups that need to be a part of any decision that is made on reopening schools. It's not just parents, it's not just teachers. We have all of these unions who need to agree on the plan. And I also don't think it's fair to compare our district to private schools. They have a lot more money than we do. If anyone's been paying attention to how we're funded, it's clear that CUSD doesn't have the necessary funding to do things like perfect online learning and make our campuses, as safe as we can. And I appreciate everything that the board and that our teachers and staff have done. We got through online learning. We were fortunate that it was fairly painless. And it's important to me that you're considering everyone's health. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Betsy. And Leslie, just one last wrap. We're done with the comments that have come in?
That is correct. There are no more comments.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and close public comment on this item, and let's circle back with staff. Do you guys have anything else you need to add before I go back to the board for further discussion?
No, ready to discuss.
Okay. Anybody want to kick off here with anything they still have on their mind on this item? Jerry, go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and start. I don't have a long laundry list, but I appreciate the parents coming today to share this because I actually do identify with a lot of this. I have 2 girls, and I don't think the teachers are wonderful. I know some of them. I've been talking to them. They go to the school parking lot. This was back a couple of weeks ago to use the Wi-Fi there just to kind of get things to work. So I appreciate that. But I do understand that this is not at the same level as the normal school. And I think the first speaker talked about wanting to, I don't know if we necessarily can have the same number of instruction hours. I'd be interested in Stacy's thoughts on that. But I think insofar as we can talk about sort of some minimum level, that would be great. The question I had for staff, it occurred to me as I was listening to all this, is that when we went into lockdown, I know that Dr. Baker is fairly involved in working with all the superintendents in the county so that we took action as a step, as a county. So now that we're coming out, I don't know, Dr. Baker, Stacy, could you comment on, are there actions like this to sort of, so that we're coordinated? Because I do understand, I think folks talking about how they're going to get back, how they're going to go back to work if there's a 7-year-old, right? And that makes a lot of sense, but that's a problem that we have, that the entire region have. So just wondering, is there anything like just in the same way we're united in going in to lockdown? Is there anything like that sort of coming back out? Could you comment on that? Or Lori, you go to a lot of these, SEC county meetings. I just kind of like to hear your thoughts on this.
And I can go first. I know we have a bi-weekly meeting with all the superintendents in the county, really just to be sharing our ideas and our getting our questions asked, a little bit of understanding. And I think we're all in similar areas where we all have the desire to get our students back to school. And I really do appreciate the comments from the parents, and I empathize and I hear them. But we are in different areas as how quickly we can get back to those areas. There are some districts that are, I think forging ahead and saying we are going to do something with a hybrid model. There's those of us that are saying, we really are looking at it needs to be distance learning. And then there are a few that are saying, you know what, we're going to wait until July until these other guidelines come out. But overall, I think we're all in that same consideration pattern. We're all looking at those guidelines and saying, how can we get that to work into our district? So we do stay in close contact. We do work closely with Sunnyvale and Fremont Union, knowing that we share students, share families. So I think that is really important.
Okay, but it sounds like even though we're in the same situation, you're not seeing that same kind of in the same way we all went into lockdown at the same time. It sounds like what you're describing is maybe each district might do different things based on its own circumstances rather than.
Yeah, and I think that was really important as the conversations began with superintendents, is to recognize that every district does have some unique needs or areas that they need to take care of. And so for the county, consistency is important, but I think also recognizing that some may not be in a right spot to do some of the things as fast as others.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. That's it for now, Lori. I'll just maybe I'll yield the floor I'd like to hear from other colleagues here.
Okay, Satish?
Yeah, I think definitely this 4-phase approach, I like it. And I think we all are in the same agreement. And the only thing is how soon the phases can be, we had to be on the top of it to see that, is there a possibility to, if a chance is there, we should try to get into the right phase, in the positive way. That's what I'm saying. So, and I think, is there a way for us to make some of the yellow items to green, right? With some reprioritization on that, right? In terms of if it is a budgetary issues or other things, which is holding you. So is there anything more discussion or any direction needed from the board on that perspective? Because the idea is to make more green or red to yellow and yellow to green, right? That will help us overall. Of course, the county, state guidelines and CDC and everything comes in picture. Safety is number one. Absolutely, let's not compromise on that, irrespective of what is the feedback. But we cannot compromise on that, whether the staff or kids or community. That's absolutely, we have to keep that as a priority one. But at the same time, actively working on some of this color change, right? Which way we can prioritize some of these colors to a better color, right? That's what we needed. So if needed, we can have more discussion on that too, some guidance needed.
And I can just, if I can clarify on the yellow, so many of the yellow items we have in place, they're just particular items that are going to continue on. So we need to continue to monitor them. So not necessarily do they need to move to green, because they're always going to be something that's monitored. Our bigger concern is those reds, to get those out of reds.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Phyllis, go ahead.
You're muted.
You're still muted, Phyllis.
Okay, am I good?
You're good.
Okay. I appreciate hearing from all the parents tonight. That was great. Thank you so much for participating in our public comment. I agree with those parents who talked about making sure that our kids are getting consistent learning and more than an hour a week, or some of the things that I'm hearing from some parents about what was happening. So that kind of goes along with what I said earlier about consistency and making sure that we can, as closely as possible, approximate what they might have academically if they were in a classroom. I also really like Lori's idea about bringing kids together on a playground or something for some social emotional gatherings of some kind. And I don't know how that can happen, but I would love it, Stacy and Allison, if you could kind of figure out how that might help our kids to be able to have some social interaction. Thank you.
Let's see, Sylvia, you want to turn?
Sure. I also really appreciated hearing the comments from the community. One of the parents talked a little bit about throughout an idea of small group homeschooling. And so, Stacy, I know that we have a homeschooling program. I don't know too much about it. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, so we do currently have a homeschool program. I believe we have about 12 students that are signed up for it, and it is an option that we are exploring to offer more in the fall to increase that, where it allows the parent to be trained to be the teacher. They do have a teacher that is designated to a group of students that they do the check-ins weekly or bi-monthly, but the parent actually becomes the trained teacher for those students during the instruction.
And I think also the important thing to know about that is we get ADA, and those kids that's just another alternative program for Cupertino. So it's like they're students in our schools. It's just a different kind of program. So we get money from the state for them.
And again, more on that and other aspects of opportunities and distance learning versus hybrid, et cetera, at the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Sylvia, anything else?
I'm still processing, so maybe come back to me.
Okay. I mean, I'll go. I think I echo what everybody's saying. I've really been thankful for the public comments at this board meeting and before, all of the emails, all of the phone calls and texts, and all of the participation in the survey. I mean, I think it speaks to how much people care about education in this community. I think one of the most challenging things that I've been navigating, maybe as our board president, answering some of these emails is just the dichotomy of what comes in. And, we certainly do have a lot of desire in this community for how can we figure out how to get kids back. And we also have, I think we've all gotten them how can you even be considering sending kids back at all from a public health standpoint questions. And I think I'm very thankful for all of the work that the staff is doing to try and thread that, with the guidance from the state, with the guidance from the county, and trying to bring it all together. Jerry asked a little bit about, what is sort of being discussed in other districts and what have I heard there. It's all over the map. I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier in talking with several either board presidents or board reps to the County School Boards Association. I think what's becoming clear is there's a lot of talk going on in a lot of districts about desires, what everybody wants. And I think we are doing our fair share of that in terms of surveying and talking about, giving it, hearing from our parents who are saying, here's what I want on various sides of things. I think what I'm really appreciating about what's going on in our district is hearing about some of the realities too. And I think one of the things we've heard from parents over and over and over again is, can you just tell us how things are starting next year so we can plan for it, right? And so I think trying to find that sweet spot between we just want to be able to plan for whatever it is, and also being true to the fact that this has been and continues to be a constantly changing landscape, and also that our number one concern has to be the health and safety, followed almost immediately by in what way can we continue to provide the highest quality education possible. And if the feedback of all of those things coming together and the processing of all of those things coming together leads us to have a robust plan for all 4 phases, but also to know that eventually we have to say, what's our best shot for that high quality education with the most focus on health and safety possible. I think at some point we may make a decision for our district that is the same as a lot of districts in the state, and also different than a lot of districts in the state, because that's going to look different everywhere. The other thing I would say is that I absolutely don't think we're going to be alone in this. I think there are, the 6 biggest districts in the state have gone on record saying they think that they're going to have challenges doing any of the 4 phases, including the distance learning. So the fact that we are doing our very best to plan for the most robust version of all 4 phases right now, I think is, you know, what sets Cupertino apart, and what does make us, you know, continue to deliver on that high quality and high results for kids district. So that's sort of my reflection on where we're at right now. You know, all while acknowledging that I'm a mom too, and I have a kiddo that's struggled at home too. You know, one of my kids has thrived, and one of my kids has struggled, and I hear the frustration out there. I empathize with that deeply, and this is hard for everybody. So thanks for bearing with us on all of this, and you know, happy to hear from others as well some more.
So just to drive towards some of the actions on this list, the second number 2, which I presume is number 3, Stacey, can you give some guidance as to what it is you're looking for from the board here? Agree on what's to communicate? Is there a, I mean, I think I'll just stop there, Stacey. What are you looking for from us here?
I think it piggybacks onto what Lori alluded to earlier, is that our parents and our staff really want to know what to happen in the fall and begin that planning. Again, summer break has started, our staff is off work now. We really do want to just have a message that we can send out to them so that they can better plan. And so all indications are that we need to start in full distance learning. And if we can send that message out to them, I think that at least reassures, and for those, it allows to begin planning for how are they going to address that distance learning in the fall. It also allows us really to put our effort in this summer. We've had a tremendous outpouring of staff that are willing to come in this summer and to continue working on the distance learning models to address those concerns as far as having that consistency, as far as having those schedules. And to have them be able to spend their energy on that, I think is really important.
Okay. So while I don't disagree that we want to get this out there, it seems like a lot of, so if we could get a word out there, okay, we're gonna do full distance learning on August 13th, then there's going to be a lot of questions after this. How many hours? What is it? A lot of the questions I think a lot of us had asked, which are supposed to come back on July 9th. So to the extent that you think it's useful to get something out there, just to say there'll be full distance learning, but hey, there's a lot of other details that's coming in 2 weeks. I guess we could do that because it's looking like what you're telling us is we're not going to be ready with these constraints. But I guess my caution is there will be a lot of questions then on, what exactly does that mean? So
yeah, and I think what I would add is that first of all, I think the message shouldn't be simply, hey, we're opening with distance learning. I think it should be at this point, if you haven't seen the list of criteria we need to meet in order to be able to open up for having students on campus, please see it and know that we're working on it. If there's any way possible, our goal is the soonest we can possibly open and know the kids will be safe. That's what we're going to do, because we all want the kids back in school, and nothing is more important than their safety. So that's what we're working toward at this point, given the length of all the things that we have to do, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of that message and saying, we just want to let parents know to be ready for the high likelihood that we would need to open school on the 13th. That's a slightly different message from going out and saying, by the way, full distance learning on, it sends a different message. And I want people to know that nobody's giving up on trying to open up as soon as possible. And then but we also want to set an expectation around it. I would also have the letter say, and please stay tuned. We're going to have, we've scheduled 2 extra meetings on the 9th and on the 16th, and we'll be looking at actual schedules and details. So I think we can craft something that gives enough sense of where we're headed, and hey, don't worry, we have all sorts of ideas, and it'll all be fine. So, but I do think parents deserve, and teachers, by the way, staff in general, have to know what's expected, and are they really, how are we going to meet those criteria? So anyway, I think that's the tone of that message. But stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more from us. We intend to stay in contact with you, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I think in that case, then, at least for me, I would certainly support that. I think I certainly support the notion of getting as much information out to the community as we have them. And if it's looking like, gosh, we have a lot of reds and this where, yeah, I think it's good to get that out there. I think the positioning you're proposing, Dr. Baker, is a good one. And yeah, I think if that's sort of the tone you're thinking about for staff is thinking about for number 3, this communication, that sounds very appropriate to me, and letting people know, especially these dates coming up on the 9th and the 16th, where there'll be more information and more decisions made. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. So, yeah. Thank you.
Lori, can we do a real quick straw poll on question 1, 2, and 2.2 on this one? And just say, basically, people are on number 1, if I can just put out there, it sounds like you're all generally okay with the 4 phases pending the detail that we know has to go with what that looks like in the various places. But I think I heard that people are generally okay with the phases. Is that true?
I am.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. All right, and then on the first number 2, determining whether to commit to the 13th, you heard us say we think what I just posed, really just to combine 2 and 2, and which we did actually, is to say, basically we think that we want a message that we still want to shoot for opening as soon as we possibly can, and we're struggling to see a way forward by the 13th, so we want our community to know that highly likely that we'll be opening with a full distance learning, details to follow, and pointing them to the meetings that are upcoming. Are people okay with that model?
I am.
Right. And the intent, Craig, is we also share this checklist from the state. So
yeah, and we'll add that to it. I think that's important.
Is that checklist posted on the website, that red, green, yellow one?
Not the way we did it there yet. I think we did post, Leslie, you'd have to weigh in, but I think we posted it comes from the document, the Stronger Together, that comes from the Department of Ed. And so it is out there. But one way or the other, yes, we can get it posted. But I think ours is better because we took that full list and we created the yellow. That was our doing, but I think that's more useful actually for our community.
But can we post that on our website for parents and community members?
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful, yeah.
I like, I just wanted to add, I like Dr. Baker's, suggestion of stay tuned. That's very important because we do not want to get this as a kind of a final one. There could be changes happening in the plus or minus side, doesn't matter, depends upon how the next 2 months things are going. And, I think that's very important for us to be communicating that way so that people can wait and watch. But in a very high level, yeah, this is how it is. That's fine.
Great,
thank you.
I'd like to build on Phyllis's idea of posting this. Is there a way to make this a live document, almost a dashboard? So we update it maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, so people can see what progress we're making towards getting to opening. I'll just throw that out there if it's viable. That'd be nice to have.
And we'll certainly be bringing it back every board meeting with updates as we're progressing along as well too.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm hearing too, Stacy, is that, and I think Jerry is right, that given that we're trying to move things from one color to another, and if it's posted online, we want it to stay current. So whether it's an actual dashboard or we treat it like that and just say, if it moves, move it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
So I wanted to jump in real quick because I think I'm still a little hung up on the 4-phase number 1 framework. I'm in agreement that we should have the 4 phases. I'm not totally sure I'm at full agreement with what's in those phases, which is why I'm still a little bit holding back a little bit. I think, and I know more details are going to come at the next board meeting on July 9th. I'm curious if you can provide a little bit clarity on the process between now and July 9th. Who's speaking into what's going to happen in phase 1? I know that we had the advisory task force. I know that before you had been meeting with the FAC and you've been meeting with the PAC DLAC parent group. You've been meeting with union representatives. What's happening between now and July 9th to continue informing what that phase 1 is going to look like?
So between now and July 9th, we're still continuing. We are meeting with our DLAC. We have those meetings already set up. Our advisory team is continuing their work. Our work with the unions is continuing, and our FAC group will continue. So we'll still have those stakeholder groups that we'll be utilizing to do that focus and flare. Allison has been working within these last 10 days to really meet with staff and to talk about what do those schedules look like. So a lot of it will be refining. Just weren't at a point tonight where we wanted to bring those forward until we got a clearer, direction that we're going with the 4 phases, but they are well in progress, and we would be ready to bring them what we have in place for at least by July 9th.
And then there's a separate group of teachers that's doing summer planning as well, right? Is that part of the same group?
There is a group of teachers that are doing the summer planning, I believe, and Allison can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have 55 teachers that have signed up to do summer work on continue to look at distance learning and how to create lessons.
Okay, and so are those 2 groups informing each other at all, or is it kind of 2 separate streams happening simultaneously?
So everything gets filtered back through the advisory team. So that advisory team will still be the one that kind of filters and synthesizes and takes a look at and refines and then sends back out.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure, because I think with the phase 1, and I need to pull that slide back up. But yeah, just wanting to make sure, especially as we're talking about consistency, I'm in full agreement with what my colleagues have said about making sure there's consistency across all of our schools, but also making sure that we're not, doing distance learning is so hard, right? It's hard for us as parents to be supporting the kids on our end, and it's hard for the teachers. And I just don't, I want to be realistic about what we can ask our teachers to do, knowing that any lesson that they do in the classroom takes like 4 times the amount of time to do online because of the preparation, because of the videoing and the uploading and the, all those kinds of things. And I guess I just want to make sure that there's some balance in place to make sure that as we're putting forth and saying these are the expectations that we have for phase 1, that we're making sure that it's consistent and rigorous and academically good for our students, but at the same time not putting so much on the backs of our teachers that makes them have to carry so much burden. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, and I understand a very delicate balance.
I just have to weigh in. I agree with you completely. And so much has been put on the teachers, but phase 2 is no cakewalk. And in fact, I bet you a lot of the teachers are more fearful, and we have heard this through the committees, which is why we want to have a committee. We want the teachers doing this work. We want them building the consistency for everybody and deciding what's the right thing to do. But believe me, I need parents and everybody to know, you think it's hard to do one thing when you have to do 2 things, which is a combination of distance learning along with, that is not going to be easy at all. And I'm not saying that to create fear. I'm just saying we're trying to be realistic, and we're putting forth processes to make sure we're as consistent as possible, that the teachers are involved in making these decisions because they are the ones who have to implement it and have to be comfortable with it. So I want you to be comfortable with that. The work Allison and the FACs and everybody has been doing is for this exact purpose. And I want to assure you of that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm in total agreement. Hybrid is even harder.
Exactly. That's what I'm afraid of.
So yeah, so absolutely. So yeah, I think that's mostly what I wanted to make sure, that in between now and when we hear the next report, that there's, other teacher voices and principal voices and, parent voices, all of those groups that we've been working with up until this point, that there's still a continuation of that.
Yeah, great.
Good? Oh. Yeah, well, I was going to reflect on your question of number 2. I think what still concerns me, maybe it's just because I haven't seen a draft of the letter that's going out, but I guess it's important to me. And so I just hope that what's in the letter when it does go out is really setting the tone for, where Stacy and Allison started this, which is we all want the kids back in the classroom, number one. Number two, that in order to do that, we must be able to ensure the health and safety. And that the fact that we're talking here on number 2.1, I guess, I don't know how to refer to that on the slide, but, about committing to starting August 13th, that I guess the emphasis there is start, right? That we have to start somewhere. We're trying to answer the question that has been asked over and over and over again, which is, I just need to know what to plan for. And so if we're committing to saying start, that the letter really is, and I think you're getting at it, Craig, with saying, more to come, but I don't know how I just want to get ahead of sort of the notion that where we start is where we're stuck, or that that to provide some reassurance that all of the work towards delivering phase one well, and the reason that we're saying that we need to just sort of put a stake in the ground on that and start with phase one, because of all of the time and effort that's going to be put in on it this summer, is also being put into those other, particularly phase 2 and 3 at the same time, to ensure that we're ready to deliver on the sort of promise we're making here about that remains the goal and the priority, and that that to get there, we have to be able to ensure the health and safety, and so that we are doing everything we can to do that. I don't know. I hope that's what comes out in the letter, is that we're starting, that just because that's where we're starting is not that we're, that's not our intention for, what we want for kids. So.
Yeah, well, I think it's where we're starting is only one part of that. It's also the one thing we feel certain of is that even in the hybrid model, we're relying on quality distance learning, and anytime throughout the year, we may have to revert to a distance learning model. So we are preparing for it. I mean, every message we do is about that. We're preparing for the future. There's no way to know exactly what's going on, including when exactly kids, in what number of kids can get in there. Nobody knows. And for people who are out there saying, oh no, we know and we're starting, they don't know. It's just not true. And that is one thing that is consistent across all the districts in the county, is they actually know nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. But one thing is for sure, it will include, for some part of the year, if not a lot of the year, some distance learning. And so we said, we're going to get it right. We're working on it. We're going to make it higher quality and do the best darn job we possibly can. And we are really eager to get kids back into school to the degree that it will be safe for them to do that. When they do that, it's going to include some distance learning still, right? Because we're starting with a hybrid. That means we still have to have good quality distance learning, but you will soon see schedules and things in front of you, so you will feel better about the consistency and everything. Parents, you're going to see that. Pay attention to the meeting on the 9th. We're going to have another one on the 16th. We promise we will continue to communicate with you. Honestly, everybody, that's the best we can do. We don't know anything definitive that would tell us we could somehow promise anything right now beyond that.
And you're spot on. That totally resonates with me, in terms of you're right, reminding everybody that the distance learning is with us through all those phases, maybe even into phase 4 to a certain extent, continuing. So yeah, yes to all of that. I see Phyllis flagging. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight something that Craig said. I think when we see actual schedules, that's going to be huge for us as board members and for the community. I mean, I don't really know what the classroom is going to look like in the fall with distance learning. But if we can see some schedules about what it might look like, I think that will relieve all of our anxiety, if it's good, and I'm sure it's going to be because it's being developed by good people. I think that will relieve a lot of anxiety around how distance learning is going to work for kids.
Yeah, that's the goal. I know that Allison and Stacy are working really hard to bring that to you at this next meeting on the 9th. I hope that's true, Stacy.
That is true.
Easy for me to say.
Yeah. And I know I speak for us all when we're so thankful staff has been so thorough in digging in on all of this. Like I said, I have talked to some board members in some other districts who are spending a lot of time talking about wishes rather than reality. And so I think I applaud us for digging in, even though that's a challenging conversation to have. So thank you to staff for all of that work. Does anybody else have any thoughts that they need to wrap on? And just staff, do you have what you need for, you know, sort of the update to the community?
I think so.
I think we do.
Are we emphasizing with this one that this is, or I shouldn't say emphasizing, are we titling this one as an update or as an announcement?
I don't know.
I would prefer it to be an update.
Okay.
Because announcement would be like a little bit more, we are making more. The update is good. And we are, and as Dr. Baker said, that we are going to have periodic updates anyway.
Okay.
My thought.
And I think we can, I think what would help everybody is whatever we write, that we're going to send it to you, and please send comment. You know, we might as well do that just before sending it out. You can make comment on it, so that and it always helps to get people's feedback. So.
Okay. All right. Any last thoughts on this one? And just checking in one last time with Stacy and Allison that you have everything you need from us until the July meeting for the next update?
I believe we do. We have some work to do.
Okay. And I imagine we'll get some memos along the way too with anything you need from us.
Yes. Thank you all.
Okay. All right. I know we've still got several items. Should we do a quick break? Do people want to forge through or do a quick 3-minute break real quick?
Great.
Any need one?
Break, please.
Break, please. Okay, break, please. 3 minutes. So let's say it's 9:17 now. Let's try and be back at, I'll say 9:20, 9:21 as soon as I see all 5 of us back on the screen.
All right.
Okay.
I'll be back at midnight.
That's right. Midnight for you, Craig. Funny, I see, oh, I don't see Satish yet. We'll give him another minute. And there's Satish.
Yes.
All right. So gonna call us, well, I guess I didn't dismiss us, so we're all back. And moving on to action items. First one on the agenda is 10.1, approval of the COVID-19 operations written report, which we've had the chance to preview at a prior meeting now. So if I can get a motion in a second, please.
I move to approve the COVID-19 operations written report.
Great, thank you. Jerry, in a second, please.
I'll second it. Oh, okay.
I heard Satish first, so I'll give Satish the second on this one. Any clarifying questions or information needed before I call for the vote on this one?
We should also make sure, assume Leslie will let us know if there's any comment cards. So I don't know. We have to provide that too during this, before voting in case. So Leslie, just let us know if there are any before the board actually votes on something.
Okay.
All right, so we're all good on this one on 10.1?
Correct.
Okay, and I don't see anybody flagging me for any clarifying questions, so I will go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of approving the COVID-19 operations written report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to 10.2, approval of resolution number 19-20-21, request for and consent to consolidation of electronics. Can I get a motion, please?
Elections.
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 Oh gosh, what did I say? Electronics. I'm so sorry. My brain is a little frazzled. Okay, of elections. Thank you.
I move to approve 10.2.
Thank you, Phyllis. And a second?
Second.
Sylvia seconds. Great. So I will pause here. Any clarifying questions from anybody? We've also seen this one before. Okay, and Leslie, any comments on this one?
No comments.
All right, so I will go ahead and call for the vote on that. All in favor of approval of resolution 19/2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. 10.3, approval of the budget development calendar. Let's go ahead and get a motion and a second on this one, please.
I
I'll
move.
make a
Okay, Phyllis moves. And second?
Oh, who moved? I or Phyllis?
Oh, I took Phyllis's motion, so we'll give, you want to second it, Satish?
Yeah, I second it then.
Okay, Satish seconds it. Thank you. Any clarifying questions here or anything that anybody needs to add?
I have one question, Lori.
Okay, Jerry, please go ahead.
Thank you. So in this calendar here, when can we expect to see the levers that are resulting from the CAC recommendations? Would that be at the first interim or later?
I think we had hadn't we set November as a date for that? I can't remember where we landed on the. I think we originally had said October, but then moved it to November when you'd have a if that's what you mean, the recommendations from
right.
the CAC, right?
I had remembered something like that, that we would be able to finish up the CAC in late September and therefore have some recommendations. But looking at the calendar here, the first opportunity to do that would be December 10th, the first interim. So I was just checking on that to see if it's in fact December that we're looking at, or can we do that earlier?
Right, but just to, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, but I just wanted to clarify that the recommendations that come from CAC don't go into effect until the following year. So it's not necessarily that we need it by first interim.
Right. No, I understand. It'll go into effect 21-22, but just in terms of the process of working that in, so we see an updated multi-year projection. What's the staff thinking right now in terms of when we can see that? The multi-year projections that come from some of these levers that we were talking about.
Right, so it'd be in the October-November timeline. Okay. The budget calendar hits on the big items. So your first interim, second interim, adopt a budget. In order to get to those, we typically bring to the board at least once per month updates regarding our budget. And so we would do that in that cycle. The only thing we recommended and through the conversation that Craig's talking about is to wait for CAC to finish, and then we bring it back in October and November.
Got it. Okay, so there'll be an update. Okay, and then in terms of this 45-day update, in August, should we expect to see any new lever items in there, or that's really just going to reflect the state of the updated state budget, but not really anything at the local level?
Correct. The way you summarize that, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. My question is answered. Thank you, Laurie.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Leslie, any comments on this item?
No comments.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of approval of the budget development calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. All right, you'd think as much as I have to do this, I would have it smoother. Sorry, guys. So 10-4, approval of adoption of budget for fiscal year 2020-21. Can I get a motion and a second?
I move to approve the budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021.
Great, thank you, Jerry. And a second?
I second.
Phyllis seconds. All right, so any clarifying questions needed on this item? Hearing none. Leslie, do we have any public comment on this item?
No comments.
I'll just make a comment. Special thanks to Jeff and Dorothy for all the hard work. I mean, a lot of people put a lot in, but it's always difficult coming up with the final budget. So thank you to them for their hard work.
Absolutely. All right, anything else on this one before I call for the motion? Call for the vote?
I just wanted to say, I think just a comment about it, because I know we talked a bit about this, for a while about this at the last meeting, and how much I've appreciated just the fact that we can reduce the board reserve in order to help meet the need, but also that understanding that we still have to make these cuts, and understanding that the 600,000 that's there is there's going to be, we're still going to feel that even though it's not directly in the classroom. And so just wanted to have an appreciation for that. I know we've been talking about it for a long time, but with this one, you know, I don't want it to just go by so fast on this particular meeting without, you know, acknowledging that there are people being affected, programs being affected, departments being affected by the budget that we're proposing.
Yeah, and to piggyback, you mentioned this the other day, and when we talked, that let's remember also it's including another $3.45 million of cuts that we agreed to more recently. So really, we're talking about a $4 million. It's not 600,000. It's $4 million worth of people basically getting cut, and that's where we've gotten to. So I appreciate you bringing that up so we can remind people it's not really 600. It's so much more than that. So it is a tough time, and people will be affected, and that's difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that. I too want to echo Dr. Baker's thanks to the team for bringing this budget forward. I have to think this is probably one of the most difficult adopted budgets you may ever be called on to bring forward in your career, given the level of uncertainty and how swift the pace has been in the ping-ponging of where the different elements of our state government are on this budget. So I know that it's not going to get any easier come fall, and that we talk about moving targets with COVID, and this is definitely a big one. So thank you for all of the work that you have done on the budget so far, and that will continue to need to be done within the ever-changing landscape of you know, what's sort of being thrown at us, and a lot of it's going to be curveballs. So anything else on this one before I call for the vote? All right. So all in favor of approval of the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 for adopted budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. All right, 10.5, adoption of resolution 19-20-22, expenditure plan for the education protection account for fiscal year 2020-2021. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
I move to adopt resolution 19-20-22.
Great, thank you, Jerry. And a second?
Second.
Sylvia seconds. Any clarifying questions on this one? All right, and Leslie, still no public comments on this one?
Correct, no comments.
Thank you. All right, so hearing none, I will go ahead and call for the vote. So all in favor of adoption of resolution 19-20-22 for the EPA for the year, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item 10. What are we on? 6, right? Adoption of resolution 19-20-23, the budget transfer authorization for fiscal year 2020-2021. Can I get a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Satish. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Phyllis seconds. Great, thank you. And any clarifying questions here, or Jeff, anything you need to say about this one? All right, hearing none. Leslie, any public comments on this one?
No comment.
Okay. Calling for the vote on adoption of resolution 19-20-23 for the trans for the 2020-21 school year. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Last one for action, 10.7, adoption of resolution number 19-20-24, establish temporary interfund transfers for the special or restricted fund monies for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
Move.
Sylvia moves, and a second.
I'll second.
Phyllis seconds, thank you. Any clarifying questions on this one? Okay, and no public comments, Leslie?
Correct, no comment.
Thank you. All right, so calling for the vote, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Whew, we made it. All right, moving on to item 11, board and superintendent activity and committee reports. Who wants to start?
I don't have anything to share.
Jerry's good.
I have nothing to share.
Phyllis is good.
I'm good too. I don't have.
Satish is good.
I'm good.
Sylvia's good. The only thing I need to bring you is the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, in partnership with the Registrar of Voters, is having a candidate information forum in two parts, one part to be led by the ROV and one part to be led to include a panel of school board members. And the information for that is posted on our website that the Santa Clara County School Boards Association sent along. I believe it's under the board, I think it's under the Board of Education tab, and then there's like maybe a candidate tab. But if you're having trouble finding it, you can reach out to Leslie Maines, and they will be happy to point you in the direction to where that is posted. I don't have any other updates. Superintendents?
No, just, sincerest thanks for everything for the last several years. And I look forward to next Wednesday to get to chat with you all a little more personally. And I know I have trained you well when you buy the perfect going away book, as you did for me. So I think it's great. I really, really appreciate it. And when the meeting's over, I'll go read the comments. So thank you for that and for everything. You're just an amazing group of people. I consider you my friends as well, and just so glad I had this time. I did a little math today, and I figured I've probably been to about 850 board meetings in my career. Yeah, that's the one thing I'm definitely ready to give up, especially those that go to midnight or 2 in the morning. So, but I will miss you, each and every one of you. So thank you very much.
There's still time.
Yeah.
You can make it go to midnight.
Whoops, I'm sorry. All right, I'm here. No, thank you, everybody.
You almost got out. All right, anything else? Okay, moving us along to 12, agenda setting. I promised to drag this one out to midnight, but I actually don't have anything for agenda setting tonight. Anybody else? Oh, hearing none. All right. So with that, last chance, Dr. Baker. Last word. And do you want to close us out? Is that even allowed?
No.
Oh, perfect.
I want to just walk away. That's all I want to do.
All right.
We can do a ceremonial, we're adjourned.
Okay.
You can just say you're adjourned. Craig is adjourned.
Yeah. In honor of Dr. Baker, I hereby adjourn this meeting.
There you go. All right. And with that, our meeting is adjourned, 9:37 p.m. And bon voyage, sir.
Thank you.
All the best, Craig.
Night.